when a lie becomes the most dangerous truth you'll ever live. Seraphina Vale never imagined that one night at an art exhibition would turn her into the wife of Chicago's most dangerous man. A reckless lie. A mysterious man emerging from the shadows. And now, she's trapped in a marriage she didn't know she was in. But the scariest part? He'd been stalking her long before she even knew his name. Follow this story to the end, hit like, and comment with the city you're watching from so I know how far my story has come. The rain came down like punishment that night. Not the soft kind that whispered against windows or made people feel cozy inside warm apartments. This was Chicago rain, cold, brutal, the kind that soaked through your coat in seconds and made you question why you bothered leaving the house at all. Seraphina Vale stood outside the Blackthorn Gallery with water dripping down her neck, her borrowed black dress clinging to her skin in ways that made her feel exposed rather than elegant. And she wondered for the 100th time why she'd let Maya talk her into this. Just one night, Maya had said 3 hours earlier, shoving the dress into Seraphina's hands while rifling through her closet like a woman possessed. One night where you stop hiding in that depressing apartment and actually live a little. When's the last time you went anywhere that wasn't work or the grocery store? Seraphina hadn't answered because they both knew the truth. 3 years. 3 years since Julian Mercer had shattered her life into pieces so small she still found fragments of herself scattered in unexpected places. 3 years since she'd trusted anyone enough to let them close. 3 years of building walls so high she'd almost forgotten what it felt like to want something beyond safety. But Maya had those eyes, the kind that saw through bullshit and loved you anyway. And Seraphina had found herself in a borrowed dress that fit too well in some places and not quite right in others, standing in front of the most exclusive art gallery in downtown Chicago, watching wealthy people float past her like she was invisible. She should have turned around right then. Should have texted Maya some excuse about feeling sick, gone home, changed into the oversized sweater that smelled like fabric softener and loneliness, and spent the night the way she spent most nights, safe, alone, numb. Instead, she pushed through the glass doors. The gallery interior hit her like a slap. Everything gleamed, polished marble floors that reflected the faces of people who'd never known what it meant to check their bank account before buying coffee. Walls painted in shades of white that probably had pretentious names like Alpine Whisper or Meditation Snow. An artwork that cost more than most people made in a lifetime hanging like trophies of excess. Seraphina grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter just to have something to do with her hands. The bubbles felt aggressive in her throat. Everything about this place felt aggressive. The laughter too loud, the perfume too heavy, the smiles too sharp. "You look lost." The voice came from her left, smooth and male and carrying the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Seraphina turned and found herself looking at a man in his early 40s, silver threading through his dark hair in a way that probably made his dates call him distinguished. His suit was expensive. His watch was expensive. The way he looked at her suggested he was calculating her worth and finding it lacking. "Just taking it in," Seraphina said, keeping her voice neutral. "First time at the Blackthorn?" He didn't wait for her answer. "I'm Harrison Cross. I own the building next door, commercial real estate. You?" "I work at a hospital." She didn't elaborate. Let him make whatever assumptions he wanted. "Ah." The single syllable contained entire conversations about class and worth and whether she belonged here. "Well, enjoy the art. Some of these pieces are truly exceptional. Of course, you have to develop an eye for quality. Not everyone can distinguish between genuine mastery and expensive mediocrity." He drifted away before she could respond, leaving her standing there with her cheap champagne and borrowed dress, feeling exactly as small as he'd intended. The next hour crawled by. Seraphina moved through the gallery like a ghost, studying paintings she didn't understand while conversation swirled around her. Everyone here seemed to know each other, seemed to speak a language she'd never learned, references to vacation homes and charity galas, and people with last names that appeared in Forbes articles. She was looking at a canvas that appeared to be nothing but black paint and cost $80,000 when she heard the laugh. Not just any laugh. That laugh. The one that used to make her feel warm and special and chosen. The laugh Julian Mercer had used to make her believe she was the center of his world, right up until the moment he'd told her she was the biggest mistake he'd ever made. Seraphina's entire body went rigid. Her fingers tightened around the champagne glass hard enough that she worried it might shatter. Slowly, like someone turning to face a car crash they knew they didn't want to see, she looked across the gallery. Julian stood beneath a painting that probably cost more than her annual salary, and he looked exactly the way she remembered. Sandy hair, perfectly styled, strong jaw, eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He wore success the way other men wore cologne, and wrapped around his waist, fitting against him like she'd been designed specifically for that purpose, was a woman Seraphina recognized from Instagram posts and society pages. Vanessa something. Model, influencer. The kind of woman who made being beautiful look like a full-time career. The pain hit Seraphina so hard she almost gasped. 3 years. She'd spent 3 years telling herself she was over it, that she'd healed, that Julian Mercer was just a chapter in her past that no longer mattered. And here she was, feeling like every wound had just ripped open fresh and bleeding. Run. The words screamed through her head. Get out before he sees you, before this night gets any worse. But her legs wouldn't move. She stood there frozen, watching Julian laugh at something Vanessa whispered in his ear. His hand splayed possessively across her lower back, in a gesture Seraphina remembered too well. Then his eyes found hers. The recognition was instant. She watched his expression shift, surprise, then something darker. Satisfaction, maybe. Or vindication. He said something to Vanessa, kissed her cheek, and started walking toward Seraphina with the kind of deliberate purpose that made her stomach drop. Seraphina Vale. Her name in his mouth sounded like a weapon. I didn't expect to see you here. Blackthorn's a bit out of your price range, isn't it? Maya invited me. The words came out steadier than she felt. She knows the curator. Maya. Julian's smile didn't reach his eyes. Still clinging to your charity case, friends, I see. How loyal of you. What do you want, Julian? Want? He took a step closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody that she used to love, and now made her nauseous. I don't want anything from you, Sarah. I'm just surprised to see you out in public. Last I heard, you'd basically become a hermit, living in that sad little apartment, working your sad little job, spending your Friday nights alone with whatever streaming service you could afford. Each word landed like a punch. You've been keeping tabs on me? Don't flatter yourself. Chicago's a small town when you move in the right circles. People talk. His gaze raked over her borrowed dress. Though I have to admit, you clean up better than I expected. Almost like the woman I used to know, back when I thought you were worth my time. We're done here. Seraphina started to turn away, but Julian caught her wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop her. Are we? His voice dropped lower. Because I don't think I've said what I really want to say. What I've wanted to say for 3 years. Let go of me. You were the biggest waste of time in my life. The words came out soft, almost gentle, which somehow made them worse. 2 years together, and what did I get? A woman who was terrified of ambition, who wanted to stay small and safe and ordinary. Do you know how embarrassing it was? Bringing you to events like this and watching you shrink into corners? Introducing you to important people and having you talk about your volunteer work like anyone gave a damn? Seraphina's throat felt tight. I said let go. I settled for you. Julian's grip on her wrist tightened just slightly. And the saddest part? You would have married me. You would have dragged me down to your level and called it love. Thank God I woke up before I made that mistake permanent. Mr. Mercer. The voice cut through the moment like a blade. Cold, sharp, carrying the kind of authority that made Julian's hand drop from Seraphina's wrist instantly. You're causing a scene. Seraphina turned and found herself looking at a gallery security guard. Tall, broad-shouldered, face carefully neutral. Behind him, she could see several people watching their exchange with poorly disguised interest. Julian's expression shifted into something charming and apologetic. My apologies. Just catching up with an old friend. No harm done. The security guard's eyes moved to Seraphina. Ma'am, are you all right? She should have said yes, should have thanked him and walked away and let this humiliating night end. Instead, she heard herself say, I'm fine. We're fine. The guard hesitated, then nodded and stepped away. Julian's mask of charm vanished the second they were alone again. Still playing the martyr, I see. He shook his head. Some things never change. Tell me, Sarah, has anyone wanted you since me? Has any man looked at you and seen something worth keeping? Or have you spent the last 3 years exactly as alone as you deserve to be? The words hit something deep and ugly in Seraphina's chest. The part of her that woke up at 3 in the morning and wondered if Julian had been right. If she really was too ordinary, too small, too fundamentally unlovable to deserve anything better than loneliness. Vanessa appeared at Julian's elbow, sliding her arm through his with practiced ease. There you are. The Hendersons want to introduce you to their daughter, something about a business opportunity. Her eyes landed on Seraphina with the kind of dismissive glance usually reserved for furniture. Oh, who's this? No one important, Julian said. Just someone I used to know, before I understood what real quality looked like. Vanessa's laugh was musical and cruel. How sweet that you're being charitable, talking to the help. She looked at Seraphina's dress with an expression that suggested she could calculate its clearance rack origins from 20 feet away. That's such a cute dress, very accessible. Something inside Seraphina cracked. Maybe it was 3 years of silence. Maybe it was the champagne on an empty stomach. Maybe it was just the exhaustion of carrying so much hurt for so long. Whatever it was, it made her open her mouth and let the lie fall out before her brain could stop it. I'm married. The words hung in the air like smoke. Julian's eyebrows rose. Vanessa's perfect face arranged itself into an expression of polite surprise, and Seraphina felt her heartbeat jackhammer against her ribs as she realized what she'd just done. Married. Julian repeated the word slowly, like he was tasting it for truth. You. Married. Yes. Seraphina lifted her chin, doubling down on the lie because what else could she do now? 6 months ago? Really? Julian's smile turned predatory. And where is this mysterious husband tonight? Working. Seraphina's mind raced, trying to construct a believable fiction. He's in finance, very demanding schedule. Finance. Vanessa's tone suggested she was filing this information away for later mockery. How coincidental. Julian's in finance too. Maybe they know each other. What firm? Seraphina's mouth went dry. She had no answer, no name to give. Nothing but a lie that was already unraveling before her eyes. What's his name? Julian pressed, sensing weakness. This husband of yours, who's so busy, he couldn't attend one of the most exclusive gallery openings in Chicago with his wife. The walls felt like they were closing in. People were definitely watching now, sensing drama the way sharks sensed blood in water. Seraphina's borrowed dress suddenly felt too tight. Her champagne glass was empty. Her entire life was a mess of loneliness and hospital shifts and frozen dinners eaten standing at the kitchen counter. And here she was, pretending she had something beautiful when everyone could see the truth. She's telling the truth. The voice came from behind her, deep, cold, carrying the kind of quiet power that made conversations stop mid-sentence. Seraphina felt every hair on her arms stand up. She turned slowly, her heart in her throat. The man standing into the gallery entrance looked like he'd been carved from shadows and expensive fabric. Tall, at least 6'3", with the dark hair swept back from a face that could have been handsome if it wasn't so severe. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that looked like it could cut glass, and eyes so dark they were almost black. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Seraphina's car, tailored so perfectly it might as well have been a weapon. And flanking him on either side were 2 men in dark suits with earpieces, security that made the gallery's rent-a-cops look like children playing dress-up. But it was the way he moved that made Seraphina's breath catch, like he owned every space he entered, like the world bent around him out of respect or fear or both. He crossed the gallery floor with measured steps, and people parted for him without seeming to realize they were doing it. His eyes never left Seraphina's face. When he reached her, he stopped close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and woody with undertones of cedar and smoke. Close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze, close enough that she could see the absolute lack of warmth in his expression. "You're late," he said, and his voice carried the kind of displeasure that suggested this was a problem he expected her to fix. Seraphina's mind went blank. She had no idea who this man was, no idea why he was standing here looking at her like he knew her, no idea what game was being played. She started, but he cut her off. "We discussed this." His hand came up to her face, thumb brushing her cheek in a gesture that looked tender but felt like a brand. You were supposed to meet me at the east entrance at 8. I've been waiting. Julian cleared his throat. I'm sorry. Who are you? The man's gaze shifted to Julian, and Seraphina watched her ex-fiancé actually take a step back. Something in those dark eyes promised violence, wrapped in civility. Lucien Devereaux. He didn't offer his hand, didn't smile, just stated his name like it should mean something. Seraphina's husband. The gallery had gone quiet. Not the kind of quiet where people are being polite. The kind of quiet where everyone is holding their breath. Vanessa's eyes had gone wide. Devereaux? As in Devereaux Holdings? Among other things, Lucien's attention returned to Seraphina, and she felt pinned by it. We should go. I have a dinner reservation at Alinea in 40 minutes. Alinea? Vanessa breathed. You can't get a reservation there for months unless you're connected, Lucien finished. Yes, one of many advantages of knowing the right people. His hand slid down to Seraphina's lower back, the touch possessive and proprietary. Shall we, darling? Seraphina's brain was screaming at her. This man was a stranger, a complete stranger who was claiming to be her husband and touching her like he had the right. She should pull away, should tell everyone this was a mistake, should run. Instead, she heard herself say, Of course. Lucien's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Satisfaction, maybe. Or recognition of something Seraphina herself didn't understand yet. He guided her toward the exit with his hand firm against her back, and Seraphina led him. Let this dangerous stranger lead her away from Julian's shocked face and Vanessa's gaping mouth and the gallery full of people who would definitely be talking about this tomorrow. The rain was still falling when they stepped outside. One of Lucien's security team immediately appeared with an umbrella, holding it over them both. A black SUV pulled up to the curb, sleek, expensive, windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. Lucien opened the door himself. Get in. Seraphina's survival instincts finally kicked in. I don't even know you. No, he agreed. But you needed me, and I'm here. Now get in the car before you catch pneumonia in that dress. Why did you do that? Why did you lie for me? Lucien's jaw tightened. I didn't lie. Get in the car, Seraphina, and I'll explain everything. Or stay here in the rain and go back inside to face your ex-fiancé's mockery. Your choice. She should have chosen the rain, should have called Maya and gone home and never thought about this night again. Instead, she climbed into the SUV, the leather seats cool against her bare legs, the interior smelling like expensive cologne and danger. Lucien slid in beside her. The door closed with a solid thunk that sounded like finality. The security team got into the front seats. The SUV pulled away from the curb, and Seraphina watched the Blackthorn Gallery disappear behind them. What the hell just happened? Her voice came out shakier than she wanted. Lucien was silent for a long moment, his profile sharp against the passing city lights. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. 6 months ago, you signed a marriage contract, officiated, legal, binding. You became my wife in every legal sense. The world tilted. That's impossible. I would remember getting married. You were desperate. He turned to look at her, and those dark eyes held something she couldn't name. Your apartment building was being converted to condos. You were being evicted. You had 3 weeks to find a new place in a city where affordable housing is a myth, and then a lawyer approached you with an offer. Seraphina's blood went cold. She did remember. 6 months ago. The eviction notice, the panic, the impossible task of finding something within her budget, and then that lawyer in the expensive suit offering her a solution that seemed too good to be true. He said it was a housing assistance program, she whispered, for healthcare workers. I signed papers for an apartment subsidy. You signed a marriage contract. Lucien's voice held no judgment, just fact. Carefully worded, deliberately confusing. You got your apartment, paid in full for 5 years. I got a wife on paper, a simple business arrangement. Why? The word came out broken. Why would you want to marry a complete stranger? Tax purposes, estate planning, certain business advantages that require a spouse. He shrugged like he was discussing stock portfolios. I needed a wife who wouldn't make demands, who wouldn't interfere with my life, who would stay in her designated space and never cross into mine. Seraphina felt sick. And you chose me because you were drowning, he said simply. Because you were desperate enough to sign papers without reading them carefully. Because you were convenient. The cruelty of it hit her like a physical blow. You're a monster. Yes. No hesitation, no apology. But I'm a monster who just saved you from humiliation in front of your ex-fiancé and half of Chicago's elite. So perhaps save your moral outrage for later. The SUV glided through downtown traffic, rain streaming down the windows in patterns that looked like tears. Seraphina's mind raced, trying to process everything. She was married, had been married for 6 months without knowing it, to this man, this stranger who bought people's lives like commodities. Where are we going? My penthouse. Lucien checked his watch, a slim piece of technology and platinum that probably cost more than most people's cars. You'll stay there tonight. In the morning, my lawyers will brief you on the specifics of our arrangement. And if I refuse? If I want this annulled? His smile was cold enough to frost glass. You signed a contract, Seraphina, with very specific clauses about early termination. Break it, and you lose the apartment. You'll also owe me back every penny I've spent on your behalf, roughly $200,000 at this point. Do you have $200,000? She didn't answer. They both knew she didn't. I thought not. Lucien settled back against the leather seat. So, here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay married to me. You're going to continue living your life exactly as you have been, working your shifts, volunteering at your cancer ward, maintaining your careful little existence. And when I need you to appear as my wife for business purposes, you'll do so. Understood? This is insane. This is Chicago. He turned to look at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. Welcome to how the world actually works, Mrs. Devereaux. The SUV pulled up to a building that scraped the sky, all glass and steel and money. The security team exited first, scanning the area like they expected threats. Then Lucien's door opened, and he stepped out with the kind of fluid grace that suggested violence was always an option he kept close at hand. He offered Seraphina his hand. She stared at it. Long fingers, no wedding ring, skin that looked like it had never known real work, and felt the weight of every choice that had led her here. She could refuse, could demand to be taken home, could call a lawyer tomorrow and try to untangle this nightmare. Or she could take his hand and step into a world she didn't understand, married to a man who looked at her like she was both precious and disposable. Seraphina took his hand. The lobby was marble and mirrors and silence. The elevator required a key card that Lucien produced from inside his suit jacket. They rode up in silence, the numbers climbing higher than Seraphina had ever been in any building, 50 floors, 60, 70. When the elevator opened directly into the penthouse, Seraphina's breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the entire space, offering a view of Chicago that looked like someone had stolen all the stars and scattered them across the earth. The furnishings were minimal but clearly expensive, dark leather, polished wood, art that made the pieces in the Blackthorn Gallery look like amateur hour. And it was empty. No people, no warmth, just expensive things arranged in expensive space. Your room is down the hall, Lucien said, shrugging out of his suit jacket. Underneath, his shirt was crisp white and tailored to show a body that suggested he knew how to hurt people if necessary. Second door on the right. There are clothes in your size, toiletries, everything you'll need. How did you... Seraphina started, but he cut her off. I've been preparing for this moment since the day you signed that contract. He loosened his tie with practiced movements. The lawyers predicted you'd eventually discover the truth. I wanted to be ready. You knew I'd find out I was married to you? So you prepared a bedroom? I knew you'd find out eventually, he corrected. Tonight was simply sooner than expected. Though I have to admit, using me to save face with your ex-fiancé showed more spine than I anticipated. Perhaps you're not quite as passive as I thought. Seraphina's hands clenched into fists. You don't know anything about me. Something dangerous flickered across Lucien's face. I know you volunteer at Northwestern Memorial's Pediatric Oncology Ward every Thursday evening. I know you take your coffee black with 1 sugar. I know you haven't been on a date in 3 years. I know you sleep with the window cracked even in winter because you like the cold air. I know the last time you cried was 2 weeks ago at 3 in the morning while watching a documentary about elephants. The room spun. How? I told you, I've been preparing. He moved closer, and Seraphina found herself backing up until her shoulders hit the window. The glass was cold against her skin. I don't do anything halfway, Seraphina. When I acquire something, whether it's a company or a wife, I learn everything about it. I'm not a thing you acquired. Legally, you're exactly that. His hand came up to rest against the glass beside her head, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the heat of him. But here's what you need to understand. I didn't choose you randomly. I didn't pick your name out of a hat. I chose you specifically. Why? His eyes searched her face, and for the first time since she'd met him, something almost human flickered in their depths. Because 7 months ago, I watched you sit with a dying child for 6 hours. Her parents couldn't make it to the hospital because of a snowstorm. She was terrified, and you held her hand and read her stories and stayed with her until she fell asleep. You didn't know I was there, didn't know anyone was watching. You just saw someone who needed comfort and gave it. Seraphina's throat went tight. She remembered that night, remembered little Emma with the leukemia and the fear in her eyes. I've built an empire on ruthlessness, Lucian continued, his voice dropping lower, on seeing weakness and exploiting it, on taking what I want and destroying anything that gets in my way. And then I saw you, this woman who was barely surviving herself, giving away pieces of her heart to strangers. And I wanted that. Wanted to own something that soft, something that good, something that would never exist in my world otherwise. That's sick. Yes, he didn't deny it, didn't apologize. But it's the truth. So I found out everything about you. Your financial situation, your housing crisis, your complete lack of family to help you. And I created an opportunity. You're the one who bought my building. The realization hit Seraphina like ice water. You engineered my eviction. I engineered your salvation. Lucian's jaw tightened. You were going to end up homeless or in debt or living in some dangerous neighborhood where you'd be another statistic. I gave you an alternative. You trapped me. I married you. His hand moved from the glass to her face, fingers curling around her jaw with a gentleness that contradicted everything else about him. And now you're standing in my penthouse wearing a dress you borrowed because you can't afford your own, married to a man you didn't know existed, and you're trying to decide if I'm your worst nightmare or your only option. Seraphina's heart hammered against her ribs. Let me go. No. The word was absolute, final. You're my wife. You're staying. You can't keep me here against my will. I'm not keeping you anywhere. Lucian stepped back, giving her space but not freedom. You're free to leave right now. Call a cab. Go back to your apartment, the one I paid for. Sleep in the bed I bought. Use the utilities I cover, and tomorrow you can try to figure out how to untangle yourself from a legal contract that will cost you everything you have and more. Or what? His smile was sharp enough to draw blood. Or you stay tonight. Sleep in a bed that costs more than 6 months of your rent. Wake up to breakfast prepared by my chef. Meet with lawyers who will explain exactly what your options are. And then you make an informed choice about what happens next. It wasn't really a choice. They both knew it. Seraphina pulled away from him, from the window, from the weight of his presence. Where's my room? Second door on the right. Lucien watched her with those dark, unreadable eyes. There's a lock on the inside. Use it if it makes you feel safer. She walked down the hallway on shaking legs, her borrowed heels clicking against marble that probably cost more per square foot than her entire wardrobe. The second door opened into a bedroom that looked like it had been designed for someone's idea of feminine luxury. Soft grays and silvers, a bed that could sleep 4, windows overlooking the city. And on the bed, laid out like an offering, was a white silk nightgown that looked like it had never seen a clearance rack. Seraphina closed the door, locked it, leaned against it, and tried to breathe. She was married, to a man who was either her savior or her captor, or somehow both. A man who'd watched her from shadows and decided he wanted to own her. A man who'd engineered her desperation and then offered himself as the solution. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. A text from Maya. How's the gallery? Meet anyone interesting? Seraphina stared at the message. How did she even begin to answer that? She didn't. She turned off her phone, peeled off her borrowed dress, and pulled on the silk nightgown that fit perfectly, because of course it did. Because Lucien Devereaux knew her size, knew everything about her, had been watching her long enough to know details she hadn't shared with anyone. The bed was as comfortable as it looked. The sheets were Egyptian cotton, probably thread count in the thousands. Outside the window, Chicago glittered like a promise or a threat. Seraphina lay in the darkness and tried to figure out how her life had gone from ordinary loneliness to this. Trapped in a penthouse with a man who collected people like art, married to a stranger who looked at her like she was both precious and disposable. Sleep should have been impossible. Instead, it dragged her under like a tide, exhaustion winning over fear. She didn't hear the door to her bedroom open hours later. Didn't see Lucian standing in the doorway, watching her sleep with an expression that would have terrified her if she'd been awake. Didn't know that the man she'd married had been waiting 6 months for this exact moment, when she'd finally discover the truth, and he could begin the real game he'd been planning all along. Outside, the rain continued to fall on Chicago, washing away evidence and creating new disasters, indifferent to the lives it touched. And in the penthouse above the city, Seraphina Vale dreamed of drowning in dark water, while a voice she didn't recognize whispered that she was already too far from shore to save herself. Seraphina woke to sunlight knifing through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee she hadn't made. For 3 blissful seconds, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back like a fist to the gut. The gallery, Julian's cruelty, the stranger who'd claimed to be her husband, the penthouse that felt more like a gilded cage than a home. She sat up too fast. The silk nightgown she didn't remember putting on slid against her skin like a whisper. The bedroom looked different in daylight, still expensive, still impersonal, but now she could see details she'd missed in her exhausted haze. Fresh flowers on the dresser, a painting on the wall that might have been an original Rothko. Windows that overlooked a city she barely recognized from this height. Her phone sat on the nightstand, plugged into a charger she definitely hadn't brought. Someone had been in her room while she slept. The thought made her skin crawl. She grabbed the phone. 7 missed calls from Maya. 12 texts ranging from concerned to panicked. The last one, sent at 2 in the morning. "If you don't text me back by 8 a.m., I'm calling the police." It was 7:47. Seraphina's fingers shook as she typed. "I'm fine. Something came up. We'll explain later." The response came back in seconds. "What came up? You disappeared from the gallery with some man and haven't answered your phone for 10 hours. I'm literally losing my mind." "I know him. It's complicated. I promise I'm safe." "Who is he?" Seraphina stared at the question. How did she even begin to answer? "My husband" sounded insane. "The man who tricked me into marriage 6 months ago" sounded worse. "I'll call you later," she typed instead, and turned off her phone before Maya could respond. The bedroom door was still locked from the inside. She'd done that. She remembered the snick of the bolt sliding home, the small comfort of having one barrier between herself and Lucian Devereaux. But someone had still gotten in, still plugged in her phone, still left those flowers. She got out of bed, her bare feet sinking into carpet so plush it felt obscene. The bathroom attached to the bedroom was bigger than her entire apartment's kitchen, marble and chrome and a shower with enough jets to service a small hotel. Hanging on a hook behind the door was a robe in her size. In the cabinet under the sink, she found unopened toiletries, toothbrush still in packaging, face wash in the brand she used, even tampons in the correct absorbency. The level of preparation made her stomach turn. How long had Lucian been planning this? How many details of her life had he cataloged while she'd gone about her days completely unaware she was being studied like a specimen? She showered because she needed to wash off the previous night. Needed hot water and steam to ground herself in something real. When she emerged 20 minutes later, there were clothes laid out on the bed. Designer labels she recognized from magazine spreads. Jeans that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. A cashmere sweater in dove gray. Underwear still in its wrapping, lace, and silk, her exact size. Seraphina dressed in her borrowed clothes from last night instead. The dress was wrinkled and smelled like rain and gallery champagne, but it was hers. Or at least Maya's. Something that didn't come from Lucien's careful inventory of her existence. She unlocked the bedroom door and stepped into the hallway. The penthouse was quiet in a way that suggested emptiness, but she'd learned last night that quiet didn't mean alone. Not in Lucien's world. The hallway opened into the main living area. In daylight, it looked even more stark, all clean lines and expensive surfaces, and nothing that suggested an actual human lived here. No photos, no clutter, no evidence of life beyond the material. Lucien sat at the dining table with a newspaper spread before him and coffee steaming in a white ceramic cup. He'd changed from last night's suit into dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms that were corded with muscle and marked with scars she couldn't quite make out from this distance. His hair was damp, suggesting he'd also showered. He looked up when she entered, and those dark eyes tracked her movement with the focused attention of a predator. "You didn't wear the clothes I left," he said. Not quite a question. "I prefer my own things." "That dress looks like you slept in it." "I did." Seraphina stayed near the hallway, maintaining distance. "After someone broke into my locked room to plug in my phone." Lucien's expression didn't change. "The penthouse has a master override on all interior locks. Security measure. And I didn't break in, I used a key. That's literally the definition of breaking in when someone has locked a door for privacy." "You were asleep. I wanted to make sure your phone was charged in case of emergency." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. Breakfast will be ready in 5 minutes." "I'm not hungry." "You haven't eaten since yesterday afternoon. Your blood sugar is probably bottoming out. Sit down, Seraphina." The use of her full name instead of the nickname Julian had weaponized felt deliberate. Everything about Lucien felt deliberate. "I want to go home." "You are home." He took a sip of coffee, watching her over the rim. "Legally, this is your primary residence, but if you mean the apartment, we can discuss that after breakfast and after you've met with the lawyers." "I don't want to meet with lawyers. I want to leave." Lucien set down his cup with careful precision. "Then leave. The elevator code is 4729. Walk out. Go back to your apartment, which, I remind you, I own and pay for. Pretend last night didn't happen. See how long it takes before reality catches up with you." "You're threatening me." "I'm stating facts." He stood, and Seraphina hated how her body tensed, how every instinct screamed at her to either fight or run. "You signed a contract. That contract has consequences. You can ignore them if you want, but they don't stop existing because you're uncomfortable. You manipulated me into signing something I didn't understand. I presented an opportunity. You took it." He moved closer, and Seraphina forced herself to hold her ground. "You needed housing. I provided it. The method might have been unconventional, but the result is the same. You have a roof over your head because of me. You engineered the crisis that made me desperate in the first place. Prove it." His voice went cold. "Go ahead. Get a lawyer. Try to demonstrate that I deliberately bought your building and forced the condo conversion. Except you can't, because I used 3 shell corporations and 2 intermediaries, and the paper trail leads nowhere. You'd spend tens of thousands of dollars you don't have chasing ghosts." The casual way he admitted to it, no shame, no guilt, just pragmatic acknowledgement of his own ruthlessness, made Seraphina's hands curl into fists. "You're proud of it. You destroyed my life, and you're proud." "I didn't destroy your life. I restructured it." Lucien stopped close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. "Before me, you were drowning, working 60-hour weeks to afford a shithole apartment in a neighborhood where you couldn't walk home after dark without looking over your shoulder, eating ramen for dinner because you gave half your paycheck to medical debt from when you didn't have insurance, going to bed alone every night wondering if this was all your life would ever be." Each word landed like a slap because they were all true. She'd never told anyone how bad things had gotten, never admitted to the nights she'd cried over bank statements or skipped meals to make rent. "How do you know all that?" Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. "I told you. When I acquire something, I learn everything about it." He reached out, and Seraphina flinched, but he only tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was almost tender. Almost. "Your credit card statements, your hospital records, your therapy sessions after Julian left. Yes, I know about those too. The prescription for anxiety medication you couldn't afford to refill. Every detail of your carefully constructed survival." Seraphina felt stripped bare, exposed. "You had no right." "I had every right the moment you signed that contract." His hand dropped away. "Now sit down and eat breakfast before you pass out. We have a long day ahead." She should have run. Should have taken the elevator code and gotten as far from this man as possible. Instead, she found herself walking to the table and sinking into the chair across from him, her legs shaking too much to support her weight. A man in a white chef's coat emerged from what must have been the kitchen carrying plates. He set one in front of Seraphina without making eye contact. Scrambled eggs that looked fluffy and perfect, bacon crispy enough to shatter, toast cut into precise triangles, fresh fruit arranged like art. The kind of breakfast she'd seen in hotel brochures but never actually eaten. "Thank you, Marcus," Lucian said, and the chef disappeared back into the kitchen. Seraphina stared at the food. Her stomach was eating itself, but pride made her hesitate. "It's not poisoned," Lucian said dryly. "If I wanted you dead, there are far more efficient methods." "That's not comforting." "It wasn't meant to be." He returned to his newspaper, seemingly content to let her make her own choice. She picked up the fork. The eggs tasted like butter and herbs and something she couldn't identify. They tasted expensive. She hated that she was hungry enough to eat them anyway. They sat in silence for several minutes, Lucian reading his paper while Seraphina worked through breakfast with mechanical efficiency. The food was good. She refused to admit it was the best breakfast she'd had in years. "The lawyers will be here at 9, Lucian said without looking up from the business section. "Gerald Moss and Patricia Chen, they're the best contract attorneys in Chicago. They'll explain your options in detail." "What options? You already said I'm trapped." "Trapped is dramatic." He turned a page. "You have choices. They just all come with consequences." "That's the same thing." "No, it's not." Now he did look at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. Trapped means no way out. You have ways out. You just have to decide what you're willing to sacrifice to take them. Before Seraphina could respond, the elevator chimed. Her entire body went rigid. She wasn't ready for lawyers. Wasn't ready for any of this to become more real than it already was. But the woman who stepped into the penthouse wasn't wearing a suit. She was maybe 50, silver hair pulled into a neat bun, dressed in slacks and a cardigan that suggested competence without flash. She carried a leather bag and had the kind of face that had seen everything and been surprised by none of it. "Mr. Devereaux," she said with a nod. "Margaret?" Lucian stood. "Thank you for coming." The woman's gaze shifted to Seraphina, and something in her expression softened. "You must be Mrs. Devereaux." The title hit like a punch. Mrs. Devereaux. Like she was actually married. Like this nightmare had a name that other people recognized. Seraphina started, but Lucian cut her off. "Seraphina, this is Margaret Torres. She'll be helping you today." "Helping me what?" "Get settled," Margaret said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mr. Devereaux thought you might need some assistance adjusting to your new circumstances." "I don't need assistance. I need answers." "Which the lawyers will provide at 9. Lucian checked his watch. "Margaret is here to help with practical matters. Wardrobe, scheduling, anything you need." "I need to go home." "This is home," he repeated, and this time there was steel in his voice. "The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be." "And if I don't accept it?" Lucian's smile was colder than the marble floor. "Then it will be difficult. Your choice." He left then, just walked toward what must have been his office and closed the door behind him, leaving Seraphina alone with the stranger who kept calling her Mrs. Devereaux. Margaret set her bag on the table and pulled out a tablet. "I know this is overwhelming. I've been helping people navigate complicated situations for 20 years. Why don't we start with something simple? When's the last time you had clothes that actually fit?" The question was so unexpected that Seraphina actually laughed. It came out bitter. "Is that what matters right now? My wardrobe?" "No." Margaret's voice gentled. "What matters is that you're scared and angry and trying to figure out how to survive whatever this is. But you can't do that on an empty stomach wearing yesterday's dress. So let's start with the small things. Get you some clothes that make you feel less vulnerable. Then we'll work on the bigger problems." It was the first thing anyone had said since last night that acknowledged Seraphina's humanity instead of treating her like an asset or a problem to manage. She felt something in her chest crack open. "I don't have money for new clothes." "Mr. Devereaux has arranged for an account in your name. Unlimited credit for anything you need." "I don't want his money." Margaret studied her for a long moment. "Then what do you want?" The question hung in the air. What did she want? To wake up yesterday and make different choices? To have never been desperate enough to sign papers she didn't read? To go back to her small, safe life where she was lonely, but at least understood the rules? "I want to understand what's happening," Seraphina said finally. "I want to know why he did this. Why me?" That Margaret said quietly, is a question only Mr. Devereaux can answer. And in my experience, he doesn't answer questions unless he's ready. She opened her tablet. But while you're waiting for him to be ready, you might as well have clothes that fit. Small victories matter when you're fighting a bigger war. The lawyers arrived at exactly 9 o'clock. Gerald Moss was 60 with silver hair and a suit that probably cost more than Seraphina made in a month. Patricia Chen was younger, maybe 40, with sharp eyes behind designer glasses and the kind of handshake that communicated competence. They set up in Lucien's dining room like they'd done this 1,000 times before, spreading documents across the table with practiced efficiency. Lucien sat at the head of the table, expression unreadable. Seraphina sat across from the lawyers, feeling like she was facing a firing squad. Mrs. Devereaux, Gerald began, and Seraphina flinched at the name. We're here to review the contract you signed 6 months ago and outline your current legal position. I was tricked into signing that contract. Patricia looked up from her documents. Did you read it before signing? The lawyer said it was housing assistance paperwork. But did you read it? Patricia's voice wasn't unkind, just precise. The actual words on the page? Seraphina's throat went tight. I skimmed it. It was 30 pages of legal jargon, and I was being evicted in 2 weeks, and I didn't know where I was going to live. So you signed without reading. Gerald made a note. That's not illegal coercion. That's poor judgment. That's desperation, Seraphina snapped, which he engineered. Can you prove that? Patricia asked. Can you demonstrate a clear paper trail showing Mr. Devereaux deliberately purchased your building with the express purpose of forcing you into this arrangement? He admitted it to me last night. Verbal admission without witnesses or recording. Gerald shook his head. Inadmissible. And even if it wasn't, proving intent would be nearly impossible given the complexity of the corporate structures involved. Lucien said nothing, just sat there watching Seraphina realize how thoroughly trapped she was. So I'm just stuck? Her voice cracked. Married to a man I don't know because I was too desperate to read fine print? Not stuck, Patricia said. You have options. They're just expensive. She slid a document across the table. Option 1. Annulment. You'll need to prove fraud or coercion, which, as we've discussed, is unlikely to succeed. Even attempting it will cost you approximately $50,000 in legal fees. I don't have $50,000. Option 2. Divorce. Illinois is a no-fault state, but your prenuptial agreement, yes, you signed one of those too. It's on page 17 of the original contract. Stipulates significant financial penalties for early termination without cause. You'd owe Mr. Devereaux full repayment of all expenses incurred on your behalf, plus a penalty equal to 3 times his total investment. We estimate that at approximately $600,000. The number hit Seraphina like a physical blow. That's insane. I could never pay that. Which brings us to option 3, Gerald said. You remain married for the duration of the contract term, 5 years from the signing date, and fulfill your obligations as outlined. At the end of 5 years, you can dissolve the marriage with no financial penalty. You'll also receive a settlement of $2 million. Seraphina's head spun. $2 million. Compensation for your time and cooperation, Patricia explained. It's all outlined in the contract. 5 years of marriage, minimal public appearances as needed, no interference in Mr. Devereaux's business or personal affairs. In exchange, you receive housing, living expenses, and a substantial payout at the end. So Seraphina couldn't even say it. An employee, Lucien said quietly, with very specific job duties and very generous compensation. That's not marriage. That's prostitution. His jaw tightened. There is no expectation of physical intimacy. That's explicitly stated in Clause 14. You have your own bedroom, your own space. I will never touch you without your explicit consent. Except you already did, last night at the gallery. I saved you from humiliation. You claimed ownership of me in front of a room full of people. I claimed you as my wife, which you legally are. Lucien's voice went cold. Would you have preferred I let your ex-fiancé continue mocking you? Let him and his socialite girlfriend pick apart every inadequacy they think you have? I would have preferred you left me alone completely. Seraphina shot to her feet, the chair scraping against marble. I would have preferred you never bought my building, never engineered my desperation, never decided I was something you wanted to collect. Sit down. No. Sit down. The command in his voice made both lawyers tense. We're not finished here. I'm finished. Seraphina grabbed her clutch from where she'd left it on the side table. I'm leaving. I'm going home, to my home, the apartment I live in, even if you technically own it, and I'm calling my own lawyer and I'm figuring out how to get out of this nightmare. She made it 3 steps toward the elevator before Lucian's voice stopped her. You have $473 in your checking account. Your credit cards are maxed. Your car payment is 2 months behind. You're one emergency away from financial collapse, and you want to hire a lawyer to fight a contract you'll never be able to prove was fraudulent? Seraphina turned slowly. How do you know my exact bank balance? I know everything about you. He stood, and the movement was predatory, controlled. I know you called your bank 3 times last month trying to negotiate lower overdraft fees. I know you've been picking up extra shifts because you're behind on your student loans. I know you haven't bought new clothes in 2 years. I know exactly how desperate you are, Seraphina, because I've been watching you drown for months. You're a monster. Yes. No hesitation. No shame. But I'm a monster offering you a life raft. You can take it, or you can swim for shore alone and probably die trying. Your choice. The lawyers had gone very quiet. Margaret, still in the corner with her tablet, looked like she wished she could disappear into the furniture. Seraphina's hands were shaking. Why? Why me? You could have anyone. Any woman in this city would marry you for your money without you having to trick them. So why go through all this trouble for someone like me? Something flickered across Lucian's face, something almost vulnerable. Then it was gone, locked behind that cold mask. The lawyers will give you copies of all documents, he said instead of answering. Review them. Take your time. When you're ready to discuss this rationally, we'll talk. He looked at Gerald and Patricia. We're done here. Send me your bill. The lawyers packed up with the kind of speed that suggested they were used to tense situations. They left without looking at Seraphina, probably relieved to escape whatever domestic explosion they sensed brewing. Margaret approached carefully. Mrs. Devereaux, why don't we... Don't call me that. Seraphina's voice broke. My name is Seraphina. Just Seraphina. Seraphina, Margaret amended gently. Why don't we get you some fresh air? There's a terrace on this floor. Private. You can think without feeling trapped. The word trapped hit too close. But the thought of getting out of this sterile penthouse, even just to a terrace, made something in Seraphina's chest loosen. She let Margaret guide her through the penthouse to a door that opened onto a wraparound terrace. The air outside was cold and sharp, the kind of October wind that cut through inadequate clothing. But Chicago sprawled below them like a living thing, and the sky was clear enough to see for miles. Seraphina gripped the railing and tried to breathe. I've worked for Mr. Devereaux for 5 years, Margaret said quietly, standing a few feet away. I've seen him buy companies and destroy competitors and negotiate deals that changed entire industries. And I've never once seen him care about anything beyond the bottom line. Then why are you telling me this? Because last night he called me at midnight, asked me to clear my schedule for today, said he needed someone who could help his wife feel less afraid. Margaret moved closer. In 5 years, I've never heard him use that word. Afraid. Like he actually cared how someone felt. He doesn't care about me. I'm just another acquisition. Maybe. Margaret's voice was thoughtful. Or maybe you're the first thing he's acquired that he's actually afraid of losing. Before Seraphina could respond, her phone buzzed in her clutch. She pulled it out. Maya, again. Either call me in the next hour or I'm showing up at your apartment with police. Seraphina stared at the message. Maya didn't know where she was, didn't know about Lucien or the marriage, or any of it. Still thought Seraphina's biggest problem was getting over Julian. If Seraphina called her, she'd have to explain. Have to admit that her entire life for the past 6 months had been a lie. That she'd been so desperate she'd signed away her autonomy without realizing it. The shame of it made her throat close. She typed, I'm fine. Really. Just dealing with some personal stuff. I'll call you tomorrow, I promise. The response was immediate. You're scaring me. I know. I'm sorry. But I'm safe. Just need a day to sort some things out. She turned off her phone before Maya could argue. You didn't tell your friend, Margaret observed. How do you explain this? Hey, remember how I've been living in that subsidized apartment? Turns out I accidentally married a billionaire in the process. Surprise! Seraphina laughed, and it came out broken. She'd think I'd lost my mind. Have you? The question was gentle but direct. Seraphina considered it. I don't know, she admitted. 24 hours ago, my life made sense. I was lonely and broke and probably going to die alone. But at least I understood the rules. Now I'm married to a man who's been stalking me for months, living in a penthouse I can't afford, wearing clothes that aren't mine, and being told I'm trapped for 5 years unless I want to destroy myself financially. She looked at Margaret. So yeah, maybe I have lost my mind. Or maybe, Margaret said carefully, you're just seeing clearly for the first time how little control you've ever really had. The words hit harder than they should have, because they were true. Seraphina had spent 3 years telling herself she was fine, she was coping, she had her life together. But the reality was she'd been one crisis away from disaster the entire time. The eviction had just exposed what was already there. I need to go for a walk, she said abruptly. Just around the neighborhood or something. Clear my head. I'll have the driver bring the car around. No, I want to walk. Alone. Margaret hesitated. Mr. Devereaux prefers you have security when you leave the building. I don't care what Mr. Devereaux prefers. I'm afraid it's not optional. Margaret's voice was apologetic but firm. You're his wife now. That makes you a target. There are people who would love to get their hands on anything or anyone connected to him. So I'm a prisoner. You're protected. Margaret pulled out her phone. I'll have Marcus keep his distance. You won't even notice him. Who's Marcus? The chef. He's also trained in executive protection. Of course, the chef was also a bodyguard. Because in Lucien's world, everyone had multiple purposes. Nothing was simple. No one was just what they appeared to be. 20 minutes later, Seraphina was back in her borrowed dress because Margaret's shopping efforts hadn't produced clothes yet, walking down Michigan Avenue with a man who made excellent scrambled eggs trailing her from 50 feet back. The city felt different from ground level after spending the morning 70 floors up. More real. More chaotic. More like the world she actually belonged to. She walked without destination, just needing movement and air and space between herself and the penthouse. Past shops she couldn't afford, restaurants with prix-fixe menus that cost more than her weekly grocery budget, people who moved through the world like they'd never known what it meant to check a price tag. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out expecting Maya again. Instead, the caller ID read unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then curiosity won. Hello? Seraphina Vale. The voice on the other end was male, smooth, vaguely familiar. Or should I say Seraphina Devereaux now? Congratulations on the marriage. Her blood went cold. Who is this? Someone who's very interested in your new husband, and in you by extension. A pause. We should meet. I have information you'll want to hear. I'm not meeting a stranger who calls from an unknown number. Even if that stranger can tell you the real reason Lucien Devereaux married you, even if I can prove he's not the savior he's pretending to be? Seraphina stopped walking. Behind her, Marcus tensed but didn't approach. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Too easy to trace. There's a coffee shop on State Street, 3 blocks from where you're standing. Café Umbria. I'll be in the back corner in 20 minutes. Come alone. How do you know where I'm standing? Because I'm watching you right now. The line went dead. Seraphina's hands shook as she lowered the phone. She scanned the street, looking for anyone paying too much attention, but there were hundreds of people. Any of them could be watching. She should call Lucien, should tell Marcus, should go back to the penthouse where it was safe. Instead, she started walking toward State Street. Marcus followed at his careful distance, probably assuming she was just continuing her aimless wandering. When she reached Café Umbria, she paused outside, her heart hammering. This was stupid, dangerous, exactly the kind of impulsive decision that got people hurt. But the voice on the phone had known things, had known her married name when she'd only learned it herself 12 hours ago. She pushed through the door. The coffee shop was deliberately rustic. Exposed brick, mismatched furniture, the smell of espresso and baked goods. Seraphina scanned the room and found him in the back corner exactly as promised. The man from the gallery. Harrison Cross. The one who'd talked down to her about developing an eye for quality. He gestured to the empty seat across from him. Mrs. Devereaux, thank you for coming. Seraphina didn't sit. You said you have information. I do. But first let's establish something. You don't know me, and I don't know you. But we both know Lucien Devereaux, and I suspect neither of us is particularly happy about our connection to him. What do you want? To help you. Harrison leaned back in his chair, coffee cup cradled in both hands. I've been investigating your husband for 2 years, trying to prove what everyone in Chicago already knows but can't demonstrate, that he's built his empire on violence and manipulation and crimes no one can trace back to him. And you're telling me this because? Because you're the first crack in his armor I've seen in a decade. Harrison's eyes glittered with something hungry. He's never cared about anything before, never showed weakness. And then he marries some random hospital worker and claims her as his wife in front of a room full of witnesses? That's not business. That's personal. And personal means vulnerable. Seraphina's stomach turned. You want to use me to get to him. I want to use you to stop him. Harrison set down his coffee. Do you have any idea what your husband does? The lives he's destroyed? The people who've disappeared because they got in his way? He's in finance. He's in everything. Finance is just the surface. Underneath, he controls half the illegal trade moving through Chicago: weapons, drugs, information. He owns judges and politicians and cops. He's untouchable because he's made himself essential to people in power. You're lying. Am I? Harrison pulled out his phone and swiped through to a photo. He turned the screen toward her. Recognize anyone? The photo showed Lucien in what looked like a warehouse, talking to 2 men Seraphina didn't recognize. Nothing overtly illegal, but the setting was wrong. Too rough. Too far from the polished world of the penthouse. That could be anything, Seraphina said, but her voice wavered. I have 50 more like it. I have financial records showing shell companies and money laundering. I have testimony from people who've worked for him and gotten out alive. Harrison leaned forward. Your husband is a criminal, Mrs. Devereaux, and you're married to him, which means you can be compelled to testify against him if we can find the right leverage. I'm his wife. Spousal privilege only applies if the marriage is legitimate. But if we can prove it was coerced, that you signed under duress, then suddenly you're not a wife. You're a witness. Seraphina's head spun. Why are you telling me this? Because I think you deserve to know what you've gotten yourself into. And because I think you might want out badly enough to help me put him away. I don't even know if what you're saying is true. Then ask him. Harrison stood, dropping a 20 on the table for his untouched coffee. Ask your husband about the warehouse fire in 2019 that killed 3 people. Ask him about Marcus Chen, the man you know as your chef, and what he did before he worked for Lucien. Ask him about the real reason he needed a wife, and whether it has anything to do with looking legitimate while the FBI investigates his business dealings. He pulled out a business card and set it on the table. When you're ready to talk, call me. I can protect you. I can get you out. But you have to decide if you're willing to help yourself. He left then, weaving through tables and disappearing onto the street. Seraphina stood there holding his business card, her entire body numb. The warehouse fire. Marcus Chen. FBI investigations. Every word Harrison had said felt designed to crack open her world further. She looked toward the window. Marcus was outside, still maintaining his distance, looking at his phone like he hadn't noticed her stop. Like he was just a chef taking a break, not a man with a history she didn't know. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Everything Cross just told you is true. The question is what you're going to do about it. J. Julian. Somehow her ex-fiancé was in on this. Somehow her entire life had become a conspiracy she didn't understand. Seraphina walked out of the coffee shop on shaking legs. Marcus fell into step behind her, and she wondered what he saw when he looked at her. A wife? A charge to protect? A complication in whatever illegal empire Lucien had built? She walked back to the building without making a conscious decision to go there. The doorman nodded to her, like she belonged. The elevator required her thumbprint now. When had that been programmed? And carried her up to the penthouse. Lucien was in his office, door open, working at a desk with 3 monitors displaying information she couldn't parse from the doorway. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression shifted when he saw her face. What happened? Tell me about the warehouse fire in 2019. He went very still. Who told you about that? Is it true? Seraphina, is it true? Her voice cracked. Did 3 people die in a fire connected to you? Lucien stood slowly. It's complicated, and that's not an answer. It's the only answer I'm giving you right now. He moved around the desk. Who did you talk to? Does it matter? If it's true, does it matter who told me? It matters because whoever told you is trying to manipulate you, trying to use you against me. Like you manipulated me into marrying you? That's different. How? How is it different? Seraphina felt something breaking inside her. You lied to me. You engineered my desperation and then offered yourself as salvation, and now I'm finding out you might be, what, a criminal? A murderer? I'm a businessman who operates in gray areas. Yes, I've done things that wouldn't stand up to legal scrutiny. Yes, I've made enemies, but I have never... He stopped, jaw clenching. I have never hurt anyone who didn't hurt me first. That's not reassuring. It's the truth. He was close now, close enough that she could see the anger in his eyes. And since we're demanding truth, let me ask you something. The man who told you about the fire, did he offer to help you? Did he promise he could protect you if you testified against me? Seraphina's silence was answer enough. Lucian's laugh was bitter. Harrison Cross, federal prosecutor who's been trying to build a case against me for 2 years and failing because there's nothing to find. He saw our marriage announcement. Yes, it made the business section this morning, you're welcome, and realized he had a new angle. Get to my wife. Turn her against me. Use her to crack open an investigation that's going nowhere. How do I know you're telling the truth? How do you know he is? Lucian shot back. You've known me for 24 hours and him for even less. Why do you trust his version of events over mine? Because he's not the one who tricked me into marriage. No, he's just the one trying to use our marriage to destroy me and not caring if he destroys you in the process. Lucian grabbed her shoulders, not hard but firm enough to make her focus on him. Listen to me. Whatever Cross told you, whatever evidence he thinks he has, it's incomplete or manufactured or taken so far out of context it's meaningless. He wants you as a weapon. I'm trying to keep you safe. Safe? Seraphina laughed, and it sounded hysterical even to her own ears. I don't even know what that means anymore. Nothing about this is safe. You're not safe. This penthouse isn't safe. My own life isn't safe because you've turned it into something I don't recognize. Then leave. The words exploded out of him. If I'm so terrible, if this marriage is so unbearable, then walk out that door and don't come back. Go to Cross. Let him use you for his investigation. See where that gets you. Maybe I will. Then do it. His hands dropped from her shoulders. But know this. The second you walk out that door, you're on your own. No protection, no support. And Cross doesn't care about you. He cares about his case. The moment you stop being useful to him, you'll be discarded. At least with me, you know exactly what you're getting. A criminal. A criminal who's giving you the choice to stay or go. Lucien stepped back. So choose, Seraphina, right now. Stay here and be my wife with all the complications that brings, or leave and take your chances with the people who want to use you as ammunition. She stood there in his office, wearing yesterday's dress, her entire world fractured into pieces she couldn't fit back together. Behind her was the elevator that led to freedom. In front of her was a man who admitted to operating in gray areas and refused to answer direct questions about fires and deaths. The smart choice was obvious. Leave. Get away from Lucien and his dangerous world before she got pulled in too deep. But the smart choice assumed she had somewhere safe to go. Assumed Cross would actually protect her instead of using her. Assumed she could survive financially on her own. Assumed Lucien was lying about everything. Tell me the truth about the fire, she said quietly. All of it. No deflection, no saying it's complicated, just the truth. Lucien studied her for a long moment. Then he walked to his desk and pulled out a file. He handed it to her. Read this. Every page. Then decide if I'm the monster you think I am, or if maybe the world is just more complicated than you want it to be. Seraphina took the file with shaking hands. Inside were police reports, news articles, investigative documents. She sank into the chair across from his desk and started reading. The warehouse had belonged to a pharmaceutical company. The fire had killed 3 people, 2 security guards and a warehouse supervisor. The official cause was faulty electrical wiring, But the unofficial investigation, the one buried in documents Lucian shouldn't have had access to, told a different story. The pharmaceutical company had been producing counterfeit medications, fake cancer drugs sold to hospitals at real prices. The warehouse supervisor had discovered the operation. The security guards had been whistleblowers preparing to go to the FDA. The fire hadn't been an accident. It had been murder dressed up as negligence. "I didn't start that fire," Lucian said quietly, "but I knew it was coming. I had intel that the pharmaceutical company's executives were planning to eliminate the problem. I tried to warn the people at risk. 2 of them didn't listen. One did. He's in witness protection now, helping the feds build a case against the people actually responsible." Seraphina looked up from the file. "Why didn't you stop it?" "Because I'm not law enforcement. I'm a man who trades in information and occasionally uses that information to prevent worse things from happening. But I can't save everyone." His expression was carved from stone. "Cross knows all this. He knows I wasn't involved. But the optics are convenient. Rich businessman with connections to a warehouse that burned down. So he keeps pushing the narrative that I'm responsible, hoping something sticks. Why do you have all these documents? This is sealed investigation material. Because I make it my business to know everything that might be used against me." Lucian sat on the edge of his desk. "And because in my world, information is the only currency that matters. You want to know who I am? I'm the man who knows everyone's secrets and uses them to stay ahead. I'm ruthless and morally gray, and I've done things that would horrify you, but I'm not a murderer, and I didn't marry you to drag you into anything illegal." "Then why did you marry me?" The question hung between them. Lucien's jaw worked like he was chewing on words he didn't want to say. Finally, "Because I'm tired of being alone in a world full of people who only want me for what I can do for them. And you're the first person I've seen in a decade who does kind things for no reason, who sits with dying children and asks for nothing in return, who gives pieces of yourself away to strangers." He looked at her, and for the first time she saw something raw in his eyes. "I wanted that. Wanted someone who saw value in things that can't be bought or sold." "So you bought me?" "Yes." No flinching from it. "I bought you because it's the only way I know how to get things I want. But that doesn't mean I don't value what I bought." Seraphina set the file aside. Her hands were shaking. "I need time. To think. To process all of this." "Take all the time you need." Lucian stood. "But do it here, in the penthouse, where I know you're safe." "I'm not your prisoner." "No. You're my wife, which in my world means you're the most valuable thing I own, and I protect what's mine." The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified her. Instead, it sent heat through her veins that she didn't want to examine too closely. She left his office without another word and went back to her bedroom, locked the door even though she knew it was meaningless, sat on the bed and stared at her phone and tried to decide what the truth was. Her phone buzzed. Maya, again. "I'm coming over tomorrow morning, whether you like it or not. 10 a.m. Be ready to talk." Seraphina typed back. "Don't. Please. I'll explain everything soon, but I need more time." "No more time tomorrow, 10 a.m. I'm worried about you." There was no way to explain this to Maya. No way to make her understand that Seraphina's entire life had been a fiction for 6 months, and she'd only just discovered it. She turned off her phone and lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in the penthouse, Lucien was working or making calls or doing whatever it was that men like him did when they weren't destroying lives with marriage contracts. Outside, Chicago glittered in the fading light, a city full of people who weren't trapped in penthouses with dangerous men who admitted to moral ambiguity. Seraphina closed her eyes and tried to imagine what her life would look like if she walked away tomorrow. Where would she go? Back to the apartment Lucien owned? To Maya's couch? To Harrison Cross's protection that came with the price of testifying against a man she barely knew? Every option felt like falling. She must have dozed off because when she opened her eyes again, it was dark outside. The city lights created artificial constellations against the black sky. Her room was dark except for the glow from under the door. She got up, her body stiff from sleeping in her clothes. When she opened the door, she found the penthouse quiet. Dark except for one light coming from the kitchen. Seraphina walked toward it, her bare feet silent on marble. Lucien stood at the kitchen island with a glass of whiskey and an open laptop. He'd changed into a black t-shirt and dark jeans, the casual clothing somehow making him look more dangerous than the suits. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression gentled. "I thought you were asleep." "I was, I think." Seraphina rubbed her eyes. "What time is it?" "Almost 11?" He gestured to the glass. "Want one?" She should say no, should go back to her room and lock the door and maintain whatever boundaries still existed between them. Instead, she said, "Yes." He poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal glass and slid it across the counter. She picked it up, the whiskey burning her throat in a way that felt grounding. They stood in silence for several minutes, the only sound the quiet hum of the city 70 floors below. "I'm not leaving," Seraphina said finally. Lucienne's eyes snapped to hers. "Not because I forgive you," she continued. "Not because I trust you, but because every other option is worse, and because—" She stopped, not sure she wanted to finish the sentence. "Because?" "Because I'm tired of being alone too." The admission felt like stripping naked. "And at least here, I know what I'm dealing with." Probably, Lucian agreed. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For the deception, for engineering your crisis, for all of it." "Are you?" "Because you got exactly what you wanted." "I got a wife who looks at me like I'm a monster." "You are a monster." "Yes." He took a drink. "But maybe you're the kind of person who can live with monsters. You do it every day at that hospital, sitting with people's worst fears, their darkness." "That's different." "Is it?" Lucian set down his glass. "Or is suffering just suffering, and you're someone who walks toward it instead of away?" Seraphina didn't have an answer to that. They finished their drinks in silence. When Seraphina set her empty glass on the counter, Lucienne was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "Go to bed," he said quietly. "Tomorrow will be complicated enough without adding exhaustion to it." She nodded and turned to leave. Made it 3 steps before his voice stopped her. "Seraphina?" She looked back. "Thank you. For staying." The words shouldn't have mattered, shouldn't have made her chest feel warm, but they did. She went to bed in her borrowed nightgown and lay awake for hours, listening to the city breathe and wondering what she'd just agreed to. Wondering if staying with a monster who valued her kindness was somehow less lonely than leaving for a world that had only ever seen her desperation. Wondering if maybe she was more broken than she'd ever admitted, to find something almost like safety in the arms of a man who'd trapped her here. But mostly wondering what would happen tomorrow when Maya showed up demanding answers, and Seraphina had to decide how much truth she was ready to speak aloud. Because once she said it, once she admitted to someone else that she'd married a stranger and couldn't leave, there would be no pretending anymore that her life was anything close to normal. Outside, the rain started again, tapping against the windows like a reminder that some storms never really ended. They just changed shape and kept falling. Maya arrived at exactly 10 o'clock the next morning, and Seraphina knew the moment the elevator doors opened that this conversation was going to detonate whatever fragile piece she'd constructed in the past 12 hours. Her best friend stood in the penthouse entrance wearing yoga pants and an oversized northwestern hoodie, her hair pulled into a messy bun, eyes blazing with the kind of righteous fury that only came from genuine worry. She took in the marble floors, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the art that probably cost more than her annual salary, and her expression shifted from concern to confusion to something harder. "What the hell is this?" Maya's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Seraphina had been sitting at the dining table with coffee she couldn't taste, wearing clothes that Margaret had somehow procured overnight, designer jeans that fit perfectly, a cream cashmere sweater that felt like a cloud, everything screaming money she didn't have. She stood slowly, her hand shaking around the coffee cup. "Maya, I can explain. You disappeared from a gallery with a strange man, didn't answer your phone for 12 hours, and now you're standing in what looks like a penthouse straight out of Architectural Digest, wearing clothes that cost more than our rent." Maya's voice climbed higher. "So yeah, Sarah, I really hope you can explain, because right now I'm about 3 seconds from calling the police." "I'm married." The words fell between them like a grenade. Maya's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "You're what?" "Married, legally, for 6 months." Seraphina set down her coffee before she dropped it. I didn't know. I thought I was signing housing assistance paperwork. But it was actually a marriage contract, and the man who owns this penthouse is technically my husband, and I only found out 2 nights ago when he showed up at the gallery. And stop. Maya held up a hand. Just stop. You're telling me you've been married for 6 months and didn't know? I know how it sounds. It sounds insane. It sounds like you've either lost your mind or someone is seriously manipulating you. Maya stepped further into the penthouse, her sneakers silent on marble. Where is he, this husband? His office. Working. I want to meet him. Maya, that's not a good idea. But I don't care if it's a good idea. Maya's jaw set in the expression Seraphina recognized from a decade of friendship. The expression that meant she wasn't backing down. Either I meet him right now or I'm dragging you out of here and we're going straight to a lawyer. Before Seraphina could respond, Lucian's voice came from the hallway. That won't be necessary. He emerged from his office wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Maya's car. His dark hair perfectly styled, every inch the dangerous businessman Seraphina was beginning to understand he actually was. He moved with that predatory grace that made people's hindbrain scream warnings, and Seraphina watched Maya's entire body tense. You must be Maya. Lucian extended his hand. Lucian Devereaux. It's a pleasure to finally meet Seraphina's closest friend. Maya didn't take his hand. Cut the polite bullshit. What did you do to her? Something flickered in Lucien's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect. He lowered his hand. I married her 6 months ago. The circumstances were admittedly unconventional, but everything was legal. Unconventional. Maya laughed, bitter and sharp. Is that what rich people call tricking someone into signing away their life? Unconventional? Maya, Seraphina started, but her friend cut her off. No, I want to hear him explain it. She turned back to Lucian. Sarah was being evicted 6 months ago. She was desperate. Did you engineer that desperation? Lucien's expression didn't change. Yes. The casual admission made Seraphina's stomach drop. She'd known the truth, but hearing him say it so bluntly to Maya made it feel more real, more unforgivable. You're admitting you manipulated her into marriage? Maya's voice went deadly quiet. I'm admitting I created circumstances that made my proposal more attractive. Whether that constitutes manipulation is a matter of perspective. It's not perspective, it's fraud. Actually, it's contract law. Lucian moved to the dining table and poured himself coffee with measured movements. Seraphina signed a legal document of her own free will. That the document wasn't what she thought it was doesn't invalidate the signature. Maya looked at Seraphina. Please tell me you're getting this annulled. Please tell me you have a lawyer tearing this apart. I met with lawyers yesterday. Seraphina's voice came out smaller than she wanted. The contract is ironclad. Breaking it would cost me everything I have and more. So you're trapped. Seraphina looked at Lucien, then back at Maya. It's complicated. It's not complicated. He trapped you. Maya grabbed Seraphina's arm. We're leaving, right now. You can stay with me while we figure this out. And then what? Lucian's voice cut through the moment. She loses her apartment, which I own. She owes me $600,000 in penalties for breach of contract. She destroys her credit trying to fight a case she can't win. Is that really better than staying here with housing, income, and security? Security? Maya's laugh was vicious. You call this security? She's a prisoner. She's my wife. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing. Lucien set down his coffee with careful precision. Ms. Chen, I understand your concern for your friend. It speaks well of you, but this is between Seraphina and myself. She's an adult capable of making her own decisions. Except you didn't give her a real choice, did you? Maya's eyes blazed. You manipulated her into a corner and then presented yourself as the only option. That's not choice. That's coercion. Call it what you want. The result is the same. Lucien looked at Seraphina, and something in his expression made her breath catch. She can leave any time she wants. I won't stop her, but she's choosing to stay. Because you've made it financially impossible for her to leave. Because I'm offering her something better than what she had before. His voice went cold. Before me, she was drowning, working herself to death in a job that barely paid bills, eating ramen for dinner, going to bed alone every night wondering if this was all her life would ever be. I gave her an alternative. You gave her a cage with better furniture. I gave her a choice. Lucian turned his attention fully to Maya, and Seraphina saw her friend actually take a step back. And unlike everyone else in her life, I'm not pretending to offer her something I can't deliver. You want to save her? Where were you when she was being evicted? Where were you when she couldn't afford to eat and pay rent in the same month? Where were you with your righteous indignation when she actually needed help? The words landed like punches. Seraphina saw Maya flinch, saw the guilt flash across her face. That's not fair, Maya whispered. Life isn't fair, but I'm honest about it. Lucien moved toward his office. Seraphina can make her own choice about whether to stay or go. But make no mistake, if she goes with you, I won't make it easy. I'll enforce every clause of that contract. I'll take everything she has. And when she's completely broken, I'll still be here, waiting. He disappeared into his office and closed the door. The silence he left behind felt suffocating. Maya turned to Seraphina with tears in her eyes. Please tell me you're not seriously considering staying with him. I don't know what I'm doing. Seraphina sank into a chair, her legs shaking. Everything he said is true. I was drowning. I am trapped. And he's right that leaving would destroy me financially. So you're just going to stay married to a man who manipulated you? For now, until I figure something else out. Maya crouched in front of her, grabbing her hands. This isn't you. You don't give up like this. You fight. I've been fighting for 3 years. The words came out broken. I'm tired, Maya. I'm so tired of being barely okay. Of pretending I'm fine when I'm one crisis away from complete collapse. At least here, she gestured to the penthouse, to the expensive furniture and the view of Chicago spread below them like a promise. At least here I can breathe for a minute. You're breathing in a cage. Maybe, but it's a nicer cage than the one I built for myself. Maya's face crumpled. I should have known. Should have seen how bad things were getting. I'm your best friend and I had no idea you were being evicted. I didn't tell you. I didn't tell anyone. Seraphina squeezed Maya's hands. I was too ashamed, too proud, too convinced I could handle it alone. And now you're handling it by staying with a man who engineered your desperation to trap you into marriage? I know how it sounds, but Maya, he's not… Seraphina stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence. Not a monster, not dangerous, not exactly what he appeared to be. All of those things felt like lies. He's not what? Maya pressed. I don't know. Seraphina pulled her hands away and stood, moving to the windows. Chicago sprawled below, millions of people living lives that made sense. But I'm asking you to trust me, just for now. To let me figure this out without feeling like I have to justify every choice. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then, I can't do that. I can't just watch you destroy yourself and pretend it's fine. Then what do you want from me? I want you to leave with me right now. Come stay at my place. We'll figure out the legal stuff together. We'll find a way to break this contract without destroying you financially. There is no way. The lawyers were very clear about that. Then we find better lawyers. With what money, Maya? I'm broke. You're broke. We can't afford the kind of legal team it would take to fight someone like Lucian. So you're just giving up? I'm surviving. The words exploded out of Seraphina. I'm doing what I have to do to survive. And if that means staying married to a man I barely know for 5 years, then that's what I'm doing. Because the alternative is homelessness and debt and complete destruction. So yes, I'm giving up on the fantasy that there's some perfect solution where I get to walk away clean. There isn't. There never was. The silence that followed felt like breaking glass. Maya's eyes were wet when she finally spoke. I don't know how to help you if you won't let me. I'm not asking you to help. I'm asking you to trust that I know what I'm doing. But you don't. You're terrified and trapped and trying to convince yourself this is somehow okay. Maybe it is okay. Seraphina turned back to the window. Maybe okay is different than I thought it was. Maybe it's having food I didn't have to choose over rent. Maybe it's sleeping without wondering if I'll lose my apartment. Maybe it's just not drowning anymore. That's not okay. That's just a different kind of drowning. Seraphina didn't answer because Maya was right. This was drowning, just slower, in deeper water. Maya grabbed her purse with shaking hands. I can't watch this. I love you, but I can't watch you destroy yourself and call it survival. Maya, no. I'm done. Her voice broke. When you're ready to actually leave, call me. I'll help you. I'll do whatever it takes, but I can't stand here and pretend this is fine when we both know it's not. She left without looking back, the elevator doors closing on her tear-stained face. Seraphina stood in the empty penthouse and tried to breathe through the pressure in her chest. She'd just lost her best friend, lost the one person who'd stuck with her through Julien's betrayal and the lonely years after. Lost her because Lucien's logic made too much sense. The office door opened. Lucien emerged looking like he'd expected this outcome. She'll come around. Don't, Seraphina's voice was raw. Don't act like you care about my friendship with Maya. I don't. I care about you, and she was making you choose between her judgment and your survival. She's my best friend. She's someone who wants to save you from a situation she doesn't understand. Lucien moved closer. In a month, when you're settled here, when you've had time to adjust, you can reach out to her, explain things better. But right now, she's a liability. A liability. Seraphina laughed, bitter. Is that what you call people who actually care about me? I call them people who let you suffer alone for months and only showed up when they thought you were in danger from someone else. His voice was brutal in its honesty. She failed you long before I found you. Don't rewrite history to make her the hero. The words hit too close to truth. Maya had been busy with her own life, new job, new boyfriend, new apartment across town. They'd gone from seeing each other twice a week to twice a month. Seraphina had been the one to pull away, too ashamed to admit how bad things had gotten. But Maya hadn't pushed, hadn't noticed. Lucien had. I need air, Seraphina said abruptly. I need to get out of this penthouse. Where do you want to go? I don't know. Anywhere. The park. The lake. Somewhere that doesn't feel like a cage. Lucien pulled out his phone and sent a text. Marcus will drive you. Take as long as you need. I don't want a babysitter. You have one anyway. His tone left no room for argument. In my world, my wife doesn't go anywhere without protection. Non-negotiable. Seraphina wanted to fight, wanted to scream that she wasn't his wife. Not really, that this whole arrangement was a farce. But exhaustion won. She just nodded and went to grab a coat. 20 minutes later, she was walking along the lakeshore with Marcus trailing 50 feet behind, the October wind cutting through her borrowed coat like it wanted to flay her alive. The lake stretched gray and endless, waves chopping against the rocks with rhythmic violence. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out expecting Maya. Instead, it was a text from an unknown number. Meet me at the bench near Oak Street Beach. 5 minutes. Come alone. This is about your husband's real business. H.C. Harrison Cross, the federal prosecutor who'd approached her yesterday with promises of protection and accusations about Lucien's criminal empire. Seraphina looked back at Marcus. He was examining his phone, maintaining his careful distance. If she walked to the bench, he'd follow. If she met with Cross, Lucien would know within the hour. She should delete the text, should go back to the penthouse and forget Cross existed. Instead, she started walking toward Oak Street Beach. The bench was empty when she arrived. Seraphina sat and waited, her heart hammering. Behind her, Marcus had stopped near a hot dog cart, still maintaining his perimeter but farther away than usual. A man in a running outfit jogged past, then circled back and dropped onto the bench beside her. Harrison Cross pulled out earbuds and gave her a tight smile. Smart girl, coming when I called. I haven't agreed to anything, but you're here, which means part of you knows your husband isn't what he's pretending to be. Cross pulled out his phone and swiped to a photo. Recognize this building? Seraphina looked at the image. A warehouse, industrial district, nothing special. That's where Lucien Devereaux met with 3 known arms dealers 2 weeks ago. Cross swiped to another photo. This is him leaving a Shell Corporation office that the FBI has tied to money laundering. This is him at a private airport with a man currently wanted in 6 countries for weapons trafficking. Each photo was damning. Each one showed Lucien in context that had nothing to do with legitimate business. You said you could prove he wasn't just in finance, Seraphina said quietly. This is your proof? This is the beginning. Cross pocketed his phone. The FBI has been building a RICO case against Devereaux for 18 months. We know he's laundering money. We know he's facilitating illegal arms deals. We know he's connected to at least 4 murders. But we can't prove it because he's insulated himself with shell corporations and intermediaries and people too scared to testify. And you think I can help you prove it? I think you have access to his home, his office, his computers. Cross leaned closer. I think if you wanted to, you could find evidence that we can't get through legal channels. You want me to spy on him. I want you to help us stop a dangerous criminal before more people get hurt. Cross's voice hardened. Your husband isn't just some businessman playing fast and loose with regulations. He's actively destroying lives, and you can either be complicit in that, or you can help us stop him. Seraphina's hands were shaking. If I help you and he finds out, he won't find out. We'll protect you. Witness protection if necessary. New identity, new life, far away from Chicago and Lucien Devereaux. And if your case falls apart, if you can't actually prove anything, what happens to me then? Cross didn't answer immediately. That silence told Seraphina everything she needed to know. You're asking me to risk everything on a case that might not even succeed. I'm asking you to do the right thing. The right thing? Seraphina laughed, the sound carried away by the wind. The right thing destroyed my life once already. I told the truth about Julian's financial misconduct at his firm, and he retaliated by making me look unstable, by destroying my reputation, by leaving me so isolated that I spent 3 years afraid to trust anyone. So forgive me if I'm not rushing to do the right thing when it could destroy me all over again. Cross studied her face. He really did a number on you, didn't he? Your ex-fiancé? This conversation is over. Seraphina stood. Cross grabbed her wrist. Not hard, but firm. Wait, just wait. I'm sorry, that was out of line. He released her. But you need to understand something. Lucien Devereaux is not some white knight who saved you from poverty. He's a predator who saw weakness and exploited it. And the longer you stay with him, the harder it will be to get out. I'm already out of options. You have one option left. Cross pulled out a business card and pressed it into her hand. Help us build this case. Give us what we need to bring him down. And in exchange, we make sure you walk away clean. No debt, no penalties. No looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life. And if I say no, then you're choosing to be complicit in whatever he does next. And that blood is on your hands, too. He stood and jogged away before Seraphina could respond, disappearing into the crowd of lakefront runners like he'd never been there. Seraphina stood holding his business card, the wind trying to rip it from her fingers. Behind her, Marcus was moving closer, probably sensing something wrong. She shoved the card in her pocket and started walking back toward the car. The drive to the penthouse was silent. Marcus didn't ask questions, didn't comment on her obvious distress. Just drove with professional efficiency while Seraphina stared out the window and tried to figure out what the hell she was supposed to do. When they reached the building, Lucien was waiting in the lobby. The moment Seraphina saw his face, she knew something was wrong. We need to talk. His voice was ice. Now. He didn't touch her. Didn't guide her to the elevator. Just walked, and she followed because the alternative was making a scene in front of the doorman and security guards. The ride-up was suffocating. Lucien stood on the opposite side of the elevator, jaw clenched, fury radiating off him in waves. When they reached the penthouse, he walked straight to his office. Inside. Seraphina followed, her heart in her throat. The office was all dark wood and leather, 3 monitors displaying information she couldn't parse, walls lined with books that probably cost more than her education. Lucien moved to his desk and pulled up something on the center monitor. Sit down, he said without looking at her. I'd rather stand. I wasn't asking. His voice cracked like a whip. Seraphina sank into the chair across from his desk. Lucien turned the monitor toward her. On the screen was surveillance footage. Grainy but clear enough to see herself sitting on a bench near Oak Street Beach. Clear enough to see Harrison Cross sitting beside her. Clear enough to damn her completely. Want to tell me what you and the federal prosecutor were discussing? Lucien's voice was deadly calm. Seraphina's mouth went dry. How did you... I have eyes everywhere. Did you really think I'd let you wander around Chicago without knowing exactly who you talked to? He leaned against his desk, arms crossed. So I'll ask again. What did Cross want? He wanted me to spy on you, to help build his RICO case. And what did you say? I said no. The lie came out smoother than she expected. Lucien studied her face for a long moment. Then he reached into his desk and pulled out a small device. He set it on the desk between them. It was a listening device. Tiny, sophisticated, the kind of thing Seraphina wouldn't have recognized if she'd seen it in her coat pocket. Found this in the coat you wore today. Lucien's voice was soft, dangerous. Want to guess who planted it? Seraphina's blood turned to ice. I didn't know. Cross-planted a bug on you during your little lakefront chat. Lucien picked up the device, turning it over in his fingers. Which means he recorded whatever you said. Which means if you told him you'd help, he has evidence. And if you told him no, he knows you're unreliable. I told him I wasn't interested in helping him. Did you? Lucien's eyes bored into hers. Because from where I'm sitting, you met with a federal prosecutor who's actively trying to destroy me. You accepted his business card. Yes, I saw that too. You didn't immediately tell me about the contact. That doesn't exactly scream loyalty. I'm not loyal to you. I barely know you. You're my wife. I'm your prisoner. The words exploded out of her. You trapped me into this marriage, and now you're angry that I talked to someone who offered me a way out? I'm angry that you're stupid enough to think Cross is offering you anything real. Lucien slammed his hand on the desk. He doesn't care about you. He cares about his case, and the second you give him what he wants, you're disposable. And I'm not disposable to you? No. The word came out rough. You're the only thing in my life that isn't disposable. The admission hung between them, raw and unexpected. Seraphina stood, her chair scraping against hardwood. I can't do this. I can't be married to you and spied on and manipulated and expected to just accept it all like it's normal. Then what do you want? I want the truth. Her voice cracked. I want to know why you really married me. Not the bullshit about admiring my kindness. The real reason. Lucien's jaw worked. You can't handle the real reason. Try me. He was silent for so long that Seraphina thought he wouldn't answer. Then he moved around the desk, closing the distance between them until she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. 7 months ago, I watched you sit with a dying child for 6 hours. That part was true. What I didn't tell you was that child was my sister. The floor dropped out from under Seraphina's feet. What? Emma Devereaux, 10 years old, leukemia. Her parents, my parents, were already dead. Car accident 2 years prior. I was her guardian. But I was also in the middle of a business deal worth $500 million, and I couldn't be there. His voice was completely flat, emotionless. So my baby sister died in a hospital bed surrounded by strangers. Except she wasn't surrounded by strangers. She had you. Seraphina felt like she couldn't breathe. The little girl with the blonde hair? Who loves stories about dragons? That was Emma. Something cracked in Lucien's expression. You sat with her, read to her, held her hand when she was scared. You gave her more comfort in 6 hours than I'd given her in 6 months of being too busy building an empire to actually be present. I didn't know, but how could you? I watched from the doorway. Watched you be the person I should have been. And when she died 3 hours after you left, his voice broke completely. When she died, her last words were about the nice lady who read her dragon stories. Tears were streaming down Seraphina's face. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I know you didn't. That's what made it worse. Lucien turned away, his shoulders rigid. You gave her that kindness for free, expected nothing, wanted nothing. Just saw a scared child and decided she deserved comfort. And I realized I'd never met anyone like that in my entire life. Everyone in my world wants something. Everyone has an angle. But you just gave pieces of yourself away to strangers. So you married me because I was kind to your dying sister? I married you because I couldn't stop thinking about you. He turned back and his eyes were wet. Because every ruthless thing I did after that felt hollow. Because I'd built this empire on fear and manipulation and violence. And then I saw what actual goodness looked like. And I wanted it, wanted to own it, wanted to keep it close enough that maybe some of it would rub off on me. That's sick. I know. No apology, no excuse. But it's the truth. I engineered your eviction. I created the crisis. I presented myself as the solution because I'm a selfish bastard who sees what he wants and takes it. And I wanted you. Seraphina sank back into the chair, her legs refusing to hold her weight. You should have just told me, asked me out like a normal person. And you would have said, what? A man like me approaching a woman like you? You would have run. Lucian crouched in front of her chair, forcing her to meet his eyes. I needed leverage. Needed you bound to me legally before you could see what I really am and run. I'm running now. No, you're not. His hand came up to her face, thumb wiping away tears. Because you're just like me. Broken and desperate and willing to do terrible things to survive. The only difference is you feel guilty about it. I'm nothing like you. Keep telling yourself that. He stood, putting distance between them again. But we both know the truth. You stayed after you found out what I'd done. You're still here after Cross offered you an out. You're choosing this, Seraphina. Maybe not consciously, maybe not willingly, but you're choosing it. She wanted to argue, wanted to prove him wrong, but the words wouldn't come because he was right. She was still here. I need to know something, she said finally. Everything Cross said about you, the arms dealing, the money laundering, the murders. Is any of it true? Lucian's smile was cold. What do you think? I think you're not denying it. Would you believe me if I did? I don't know what I believe anymore. Then let me make it simple. He moved to the window, silhouetted against the Chicago skyline. I operate in gray areas. I facilitate transactions that exist outside legal frameworks. Sometimes those transactions involve weapons, sometimes money, sometimes information. And yes, sometimes people get hurt. But I don't kill innocent people. I don't traffic in drugs or human suffering. I have lines I don't cross. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be. It's just honest. He turned back to her. You wanted truth? There it is. I'm exactly what Cross says I am. A criminal, a manipulator, someone who's built an empire on things that would disgust you if you saw them up close. But I'm also someone who's never lied to you about what I am, who's given you the choice to leave, even knowing what it would cost. Some choice. Better than none. His eyes were hard. So here's what happens now. You decide if you can live with what I am. If you can sleep at night knowing your husband facilitates things that exist in moral gray zones. If you can accept that comfort and security in my world comes with compromises. And if I can't, then I help you leave. I absorb the financial penalties. I make sure you land somewhere safe, and I let you go. His voice dropped. But if you stay knowing exactly what I am. No more illusions, no more pretending this is anything other than what it is. Seraphina stood on shaking legs. I need time. You have until tomorrow morning. Lucian pulled out his phone. I have a business meeting tonight. Dinner with associates who need to see that I'm settled, married, respectable. You'll attend with me. That's not time, that's a command. That's both. He looked up from his phone. Tonight you play the role. Tomorrow you decide if you can keep playing it, or if you want out badly enough to risk everything Cross is offering. What if I go to Cross tonight? What if I give him what he wants? Then I'll know within the hour, and you'll never see me coming. Lucian's voice was soft, dangerous. I told you I protect what's mine. That protection goes both ways. Betray me, and I become the worst thing that's ever happened to you. Worse than Julian? Julian humiliated you. I can destroy you. He moved closer, and Seraphina's back hit the wall. I can make you disappear so completely that even Maya won't know what happened. I can erase your entire existence and sleep fine afterward. That's the difference between men like Julian and men like me. He hurt your feelings. I can hurt everything else. You're threatening me. I'm being honest. His hand came up to rest against the wall beside her head. You wanted truth? You wanted to know what I really am? This is it. I'm a man who loves you in the most fucked up way possible and will burn down anyone who tries to take you from me, including you. Seraphina's heart hammered against her ribs. She should be terrified, should be running. Instead, she felt something hot and dangerous curl through her stomach. You can't love me. You barely know me. I know you volunteer every Thursday at the cancer ward, even though it breaks your heart every time. I know you donated plasma to pay your electric bill last winter. I know you cry during elephant documentaries and laugh at stupid puns and take your coffee with 1 sugar because 2 feels indulgent. His voice was rough. I know you better than you know yourself, and I've loved you since the moment I watched you hold my sister's hand while she died. That's not love. That's obsession. Maybe they're the same thing. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. But either way, you're mine, and I'm keeping you. Seraphina couldn't breathe, couldn't think. couldn't do anything but stand there while this dangerous man admitted to stalking her, manipulating her, loving her in ways that should terrify her. "I have to get ready for dinner," she whispered. "Margaret left appropriate attire in your room." Lucien stepped back, giving her space. "We leave at 7. Don't be late." Seraphina fled to her bedroom and locked the door with shaking hands. She sank onto the bed and tried to process everything she'd just learned. Emma. The little girl with blonde hair who'd been so scared of dying alone. That had been Lucien's sister. The sister he'd failed. The sister whose death had apparently catalyzed this entire nightmare. Her phone buzzed, a text from Harrison Cross. "Dinner tonight at Alinea, correct? Perfect opportunity to look around his private office while he's distracted. The bug I planted will transmit any conversations. Just find his computer files and photograph what you can. I'll have agents ready to move the moment we have sufficient evidence." Seraphina stared at the text. Cross knew about dinner, knew her movements, was actively pushing her toward betrayal. Another text. "This is your chance to do the right thing. Don't waste it." The right thing. Like there was a clear right and wrong in this situation. She looked at the dress Margaret had left. Midnight blue silk that probably cost more than her monthly salary at the hospital. Shoes that looked like art. Jewelry that was definitely real diamonds. All of it bought with money from Lucien's gray area business dealings. All of it hers because she'd been desperate enough to sign papers she didn't read. All of it a lie she was choosing to live. Seraphina deleted Cross's texts and got ready for dinner with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The restaurant was everything she'd expected. Exclusive, expensive, the kind of place where even the water glasses probably cost more than her rent. Lucien's associates were older men with sharp eyes and expensive suits, their wives wearing boredom like jewelry. Seraphina played her role, smiled when expected, made small talk about nothing, let Lucien's hand rest possessively on her lower back, while business was discussed in euphemisms she was probably better off not understanding. But all she could think about was Cross's texts, the bug he'd planted, the choice she had to make by morning. Stay with a man who admitted to loving her in fucked up ways and threatening to destroy her if she betrayed him, or risk everything on a federal prosecutor's promise of protection that might evaporate the moment she stopped being useful. The dinner lasted 3 hours. By the time they returned to the penthouse, Seraphina's face hurt from fake smiling and her feet were screaming in shoes designed for looking at rather than walking in. Lucien loosened his tie as the elevator rose. "You did well tonight. I'm an excellent liar when necessary. I know. It's one of your more attractive qualities." He looked at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "Have you made your decision?" "About what?" "About whether you're staying or giving Cross what he wants." Seraphina's blood went cold. "How did you?" "I told you, I have eyes everywhere." Lucien pulled out his phone and showed her a screenshot, her text conversation with Cross, every word she'd deleted. "Your phone is monitored. Has been since the moment I gave you the wireless plan. Did you really think I'd leave something that important to chance?" The betrayal hit like a physical blow. "You've been reading my texts?" "I've been protecting my interests, which includes knowing when my wife is being actively recruited by federal prosecutors." His voice was ice. "So I'll ask one more time. Have you made your decision?" Seraphina looked at the man she'd married without knowing it. The man who'd engineered her desperation and offered himself as salvation. The man who'd loved his sister enough to marry a stranger who'd shown her kindness. The man who admitted to operating in moral gray zones and threatened to destroy her if she betrayed him. The man who'd monitored her phone like she was a suspect instead of a wife. She pulled Harrison Cross's business card from her purse and tore it in half. Then in half again. She let the pieces flutter to the marble floor like snow. "I'm staying." The words felt like surrender, like giving up, like accepting that her life would never be her own again. "But not because I trust you, and not because I believe this is real. I'm staying because every other option is worse, and because I'm too tired to keep fighting." Something flickered across Lucien's face, relief maybe, or satisfaction. "That's honest enough. Don't mistake survival for loyalty." "I never do." He moved closer, and Seraphina forced herself not to back away. But survival is how all the best relationships start. Stay long enough, and maybe it becomes something else. Or maybe I'm just postponing the inevitable. Maybe. His hand came up to her face, fingers sliding into her hair. But postpone it with me anyway. He kissed her then, not gentle, not asking permission, just taking what he wanted the way he took everything else. And Seraphina let him because she'd already surrendered. Already chosen this cage over all the others. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark and hungry and more human than she'd ever seen them. Tomorrow, he said quietly, I'm taking you somewhere, showing you something that might help you understand why I am the way I am. I don't want to understand you. Too bad. You're my wife. Understanding comes with the territory. He kissed her forehead, the gesture surprisingly tender. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. He left her standing in the hallway, the taste of him still on her lips, her entire body shaking with adrenaline and fear and something else she refused to name. Seraphina went to her room and locked the door, even though she knew it was meaningless, even though Lucien could override any lock she set. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling and thought about Emma, about a little girl who'd died asking about dragon stories, about a man who'd turned that death into an obsession that had trapped them both. Outside, Chicago glittered in the darkness, a city full of people making terrible choices and calling it love. And somewhere in the penthouse, Lucien Devereaux was probably watching her on cameras she hadn't found yet, convinced that possession and protection were the same thing. Convinced that he'd saved her when really he'd just changed the shape of her drowning. Seraphina closed her eyes and tried to sleep and failed completely. Because tomorrow he was going to show her something. And she had a terrible feeling that whatever it was would make it impossible to ever leave, would bind her to him in ways that went deeper than contracts, or morning came too fast and felt like violence. Seraphina woke to sunlight that seemed designed to expose every crack in her carefully constructed composure, her body aching in ways that had nothing to do with the expensive mattress, and everything to do with a night spent fighting sleep because sleep meant vulnerability. She showered until the water ran cold, trying to wash away the feeling of Lucien's kiss from the night before. It didn't work. Nothing worked. The taste of him lingered like a promise or a threat, and she couldn't decide which was worse. When she emerged from her bedroom wearing jeans and a sweater that Margaret had somehow acquired in her exact size, Lucien was waiting in the living room. He'd traded his usual suit for dark jeans and a black Henley that made him look less like a businessman and more like what he actually was, something dangerous wearing human skin. We're leaving in 10 minutes, he said without looking up from his phone. Wear comfortable shoes. We'll be walking. Where are we going? You'll see. He finally looked at her, and something in his expression made her stomach drop. Bring a jacket. It'll be cold. The SUV that picked them up was different from the one Marcus usually drove. Armored, Seraphina realized as she climbed inside. Bulletproof glass. Reinforced doors. The kind of vehicle people used when they expected violence. Lucien sat beside her in silence as they drove out of downtown, the city giving way to industrial districts, and then to neighborhoods Seraphina recognized from hospital shifts, the kind of places where people went when they'd run out of better options. They pulled up to an apartment building that looked like it had given up decades ago. Crumbling brick, broken windows patched with cardboard, the smell of garbage and desperation leaking through the SUV's air filtration. This is what you wanted to show me? Seraphina's voice came out smaller than she intended. A slum? This is where I grew up. Lucien opened his door. Come on. She followed because refusal felt pointless. The security team stayed with the vehicle, which meant Lucien wasn't worried about danger here, or meant he was dangerous enough that nothing in this neighborhood would touch him. The building's entrance had a broken lock. Inside, the hallway smelled like urine and mold and lives falling apart. Lucien climbed the stairs 2 at a time, and Seraphina struggled to keep up, her breath coming harder than it should. They stopped on the 4th floor. Lucien pulled out a key, actually had a key to this place, and opened a door that led into an apartment that time had forgotten. The space was small, kitchen barely big enough for one person, living room with furniture that looked salvaged from curbs. 2 bedrooms, one so small it was basically a closet. Windows overlooking an alley where someone had dumped a mattress. We lived here for 8 years, Lucien said, his voice completely flat. Me, Emma, and our parents before they died. 4 people in 600 square feet. Emma slept in that closet bedroom because my parents needed the bigger one and I was too big to fit. Seraphina looked around, trying to reconcile this space with the man standing beside her. When did you leave? The day after Emma's funeral. Sold everything that wasn't nailed down and never came back. He moved to the window, looking out at the alley. You wanted to know why I am the way I am? This is why. Growing up, watching my mother work 3 jobs and still not make rent. Watching my father drink himself to death because poverty felt like drowning, and alcohol was cheaper than therapy. Watching Emma go without because there was never enough. Lucien, I was 16 when they died. Car accident on the way home from my mother's night shift. Drunk driver ran a red light. His voice was still flat, emotionless, but his hands were clenched into fists. Emma was 6. The state wanted to put her in foster care. I forged documents, lied about my age, did whatever it took to keep her with me. How did you survive? I didn't. He turns to face her. The version of me that existed before they died? He's gone. What survived was something else. Something that learned very quickly that the world doesn't give you anything. You take it. You fight for it. You become ruthless enough that people are more afraid of you than you are of poverty. Seraphina moved closer, her throat tight. What did you do? Everything. The word carried weight. Ran errands for people who operated outside the law. Learned to move money in ways that didn't show up on official records. Made myself useful to the kind of men who valued competence over morality. By the time I was 19, I was facilitating deals worth millions. By 25, I owned half the underground economy in Chicago. And Emma? I gave her everything. His voice cracked just slightly. Private school, tutors, the apartment in a safe neighborhood. Everything I never had. Kept her as far from my world as possible. She never knew where the money came from. Never knew what I was doing to make sure she had enough. Until she got sick. Lucian's jaw clenched. Leukemia? Aggressive? The kind that requires treatments that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I had the money. Had all the money in the world. But I couldn't buy her more time. Couldn't buy her survival. Could only watch her get smaller and sicker and more terrified while I negotiated deals that meant nothing compared to losing her. Seraphina's eyes were burning. The night I met her, I was closing a deal worth $500 million, the biggest transaction of my career, the thing that would cement my position as untouchable. He laughed, bitter and broken. And my baby sister was dying in a hospital bed while I was in a conference room signing papers. By the time I got to the hospital, you were already gone. Emma was sleeping. The nurses said someone had sat with her all evening, read her stories, held her hand when she was scared. I didn't know. You didn't need to know. You just saw a scared child and decided she deserved comfort. Lucian moved toward the door. Come on. There's more. They left the apartment and Seraphina followed him back down the stairs and out to where the SUV waited. They drove for 20 minutes in silence, heading toward the southern edge of the city. The cemetery was small, tucked between industrial buildings like an afterthought. Lucian led her through rows of headstones until they reached one that was newer than the others, simpler. Just a name and dates that told a story of a life cut brutally short. Emma. Catherine Devereaux. 10 years old, gone too soon. Lucian stood in front of his sister's grave with his hands in his pockets, staring at the headstone like it held answers he'd never find. I come here every week, he said quietly. Tell her about my life, about the business, about the things I'm building, and every week I apologize for not being there when she needed me most. Lucienne, I watched you with her for 30 minutes before you even knew I existed, watched you make her laugh, watched you hold her hand while she fell asleep. And I thought, this is what goodness looks like. This is what I've been missing my entire life while I was busy becoming a monster. Seraphina's tears were falling now, hot against her cold cheeks. So you decided to trap me into marrying you? I decided I wanted that goodness in my life, even if I had to buy it, even if it meant using the same ruthless tactics I use for everything else. He finally looked at her. You think I don't know how fucked up that is? You think I don't hate myself for manipulating you the way I did? Then why do it? Because I'm selfish. Because I saw something I wanted and took it. Because being a good person means dying alone in this city, and I'm too much of a coward to accept that fate. His voice was raw. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just showing you why I am the way I am. Why I can't let you go even knowing I should. Seraphina stood in front of Emma's grave and tried to process everything. The apartment, the poverty, the sister who died while her brother built an empire, the desperation that had turned a 16-year-old into something ruthless enough to survive. You should have just told me, she whispered, when you first approached me. You should have been honest. Would you have believed me? Would you have trusted that a man like me wanted you for anything other than what I could take? I don't know. Exactly. Lucian turned away from the grave. So I did it the only way I know how. By creating leverage, by making myself indispensable, by trapping you so thoroughly that leaving became harder than staying. They walked back to the SUV in silence. The drive back to the penthouse felt longer than the drive out, every minute heavy with things neither of them knew how to say. When they reached the building, Lucien's phone rang. He answered it, his expression shifting from neutral to ice in seconds. When? His voice was sharp. How many? A pause. Lock it down. I'm on my way. He ended the call and turned to Seraphina. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind that involves federal agents executing a search warrant on one of my properties. His jaw clenched. Someone gave them probable cause. Someone with inside information. Seraphina's blood went cold. You think it was me? Was it? His eyes bored into hers. No, I tore up Cross's card. I deleted his texts. I told you I was staying. Then someone else is feeding them information. Lucien pulled out his phone and started typing. Someone close enough to know details about my operations. Someone I trusted. The elevator reached the penthouse. The moment the doors opened, Seraphina knew something was wrong. The air felt different, charged with tension that made her skin crawl. Marcus was in the living room with 3 other men Seraphina didn't recognize. They all wore the same expression, alert, dangerous, waiting for orders. Sir, Marcus's voice was clipped. We've identified the leak. Who? Margaret Torres. The name hit Seraphina like a physical blow. Margaret. The woman who'd helped her adjust, who'd been kind when everyone else treated her like an asset. You're sure? Lucian's voice was deadly calm. We traced communications back to her personal accounts. She's been feeding information to the FBI for 6 months, since before... Marcus glanced at Seraphina. Since before the marriage. Where is she now? In transit. She left the building 20 minutes ago. We have eyes on her location. Lucian was quiet for a long moment. Then, bring her here. Sir, if the FBI is watching her yet, I don't care. Bring her here. Now. Marcus nodded and left with 2 of the other men. The remaining security guard took up position by the elevator. Lucien turned to Seraphina. Go to your room. What are you going to do? Nothing you need to witness. Lucien, go to your room. Each word was precise, final. This is not a negotiation. Seraphina wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers. Instead, she found herself walking to her bedroom because the expression on Lucien's face promised violence that she wasn't ready to see. She locked the door and pressed her ear against it, trying to hear what was happening in the living room. Voices muffled, the sound of the elevator, then silence, then Margaret's voice, high and frightened. I don't know what you think I did. Don't. Lucian's voice cut through whatever lie Margaret was constructing. I have evidence, communications, money transfers, every piece of information you sold to Harrison Cross in exchange for immunity. He said he could protect me. From what? From me? A pause. You worked for me for 5 years, Margaret. I paid you well, treated you fairly, and you betrayed me for what? A promise that the FBI would keep you safe? You're a criminal, Margaret's voice cracked. You launder money and facilitate weapons deals, and you knew all of that when you took the job. You knew what I was and took my money anyway, so don't pretend this is about morality. This is about you making a deal to save yourself. Seraphina's hands were shaking. She shouldn't be listening to this, shouldn't be witnessing whatever was about to happen, but she couldn't move away from the door. Did you tell them about Seraphina? Lucien's voice went quieter, more dangerous. Did you tell them about the marriage contract? They already knew. Cross has been investigating you for 2 years. He knew about the contract before I confirmed it. What else did you tell them? Everything. Margaret was crying now. Transaction records, shell company details, meeting locations, everything they needed to build their case. And my wife. Did you tell them she was cooperating? No. I told them she refused Cross's offer, that she was loyal to you. Loyal. Lucien laughed, and the sound made Seraphina's blood run cold. You understand what you've done? You've put a target on everyone in my organization, including yourself. The FBI will protect me. The FBI will use you until you're no longer useful, then cut you loose. You think witness protection is some magic shield? You think they actually care what happens to you once the trial is over? Silence. Then Margaret's voice, smaller. What are you going to do to me? Nothing. The word seemed to surprise even Marcus, based on the slight shift in background noise. You're going to leave Chicago, tonight. I have contacts who will set you up with a new identity far from here. Far from the FBI. Far from anyone who might come looking. I don't understand, but you worked for me for 5 years. That earns you this one chance. Lucien's voice hardened. But if you ever contact the FBI again, if you ever testify, if you ever speak my name or Seraphina's name or anything connected to my business, I will find you. And what I do to you will make you wish you'd taken your chances with witness protection, understood? Yes. Barely a whisper. Marcus will take you to the airport. You have 1 hour to say goodbye to whatever life you had here. Don't waste it. Footsteps. The elevator. Then silence. Seraphina stepped back from the door, her heart hammering. Lucien had just let Margaret go, had given her a chance to run instead of what? What did men like Lucien do to people who betrayed them? A knock on her door made her jump. It's me, Lucien said. Open up. She unlocked the door with shaking hands. Lucien looked exhausted. His careful control cracked just enough to show the human underneath. You heard? Not a question. Most of it. He moved past her into the room and sank onto the edge of her bed, head in his hands. The FBI has enough now to move forward. They'll execute warrants, freeze assets, start building their case. Will they arrest you? Not immediately. They'll want to gather more evidence first. Make sure their case is airtight. He looked up at her. But it's coming. Maybe weeks. Maybe months. But it's coming. Seraphina sat beside him, maintaining careful distance. Why did you let Margaret go? Because she was right. I am a criminal, and she was just trying to survive in a world where people like me make that nearly impossible. He rubbed his face. And because I'm tired. Tired of destroying people. Tired of being the monster everyone thinks I am. You could stop. Walk away from all of it. And do what? The only skills I have are illegal. The only connections I have are with people who operate outside the law. I'm too deep to just walk away. Then what happens now? Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and moved to the window, looking out at Chicago spread below them. Now I show you something else. Something I was saving for later, but given circumstances, later might not come. What? Your apartment. The one you lived in before I bought the building. Come on. They took the SUV across town to a neighborhood Seraphina recognized. Her neighborhood, or what used to be hers. But instead of stopping at her old building, they pulled up to a different address 3 blocks away. Lucien led her into a building that was being renovated, construction materials stacked in the lobby, the smell of fresh paint and new wood everywhere. They climbed to the 3rd floor, and he unlocked a door that opened into an apartment that made Seraphina's breath catch. It was beautiful. Hardwood floors gleaming in the afternoon light, windows that actually opened, a kitchen with appliances that looked new, 2 bedrooms, both bigger than her old studio, and everywhere were her things. Her paintings hung on the walls, professionally framed and lit. Her books lined custom shelves. Her grandmother's quilt was folded on the couch. Even her coffee maker sat on the counter, the cheap one she'd bought at Target 5 years ago. What is this? Her voice came out broken. This is yours. Lucien moved through the space with careful steps. I bought this building 6 months ago. Renovated this unit specifically for you. Moved your belongings here while you were at work. Everything you owned that wasn't in your apartment the day of the eviction. I had it stored and brought here. Why? Because I knew eventually you'd discover the truth about our marriage. And I knew when you did, you'd want to leave. So I built you a place to land. He turned to face her. This apartment is in your name, paid in full. No mortgage, no rent. Completely separate from me legally. If you want to leave, if you decide you can't live with what I am, this is yours. No strings, no penalties. Seraphina walked through the apartment in a daze, touching her things, seeing pieces of her life arranged with obvious care. Her favorite coffee mug, her nursing school textbooks, photos of her parents who'd died when she was 19. In the bedroom, she found her clothes hung in the closet, her jewelry box on the dresser, her journal, the one she thought she'd lost months ago, sitting on the nightstand. You've had this ready for 6 months? She looked at Lucien standing in the doorway. You built me an escape route. I built you a choice. His voice was rough. Stay with me and accept everything that comes with that, or leave and have something waiting that's actually yours. No manipulation, no leverage, just an honest choice. This doesn't make sense. Why go through all the trouble of trapping me just to build me a way out? Because I want you to choose me. Lucien moved closer. Not because you're trapped, not because you have no other options, but because despite everything, despite what I am, despite how we started, you actually want to be with me. You can't buy my choice with a renovated apartment. I'm not trying to buy it. I'm trying to give you what you never had before. Actual freedom to decide. He reached out and tucked hair behind her ear. I know what I did was wrong. I know manipulating you into marriage was unforgivable. But I'm trying, in the only way I know how, to make it right. Seraphina's eyes were burning. This is insane. All of this is insane. I know. You're facing federal charges. Your entire empire is about to collapse. And you're showing me an apartment? Yes? Why? Because empire or no empire, charges or no charges, I need you to know that I see you. His voice cracked. I see how strong you are, how capable, how you've survived things that would have broken most people. And I want you to choose this, choose us, from a position of actual power instead of desperation. Seraphina sank onto the bed, her legs giving out. Around her was evidence of Lucien's obsession, her life cataloged and preserved and arranged like a museum exhibit, but also evidence of something else, something that looked almost like love if she squinted hard enough past the manipulation. I don't know how to process this, she whispered. You don't have to process it right now. Lucien sat beside her, careful to maintain space. Take your time. Think about it. Stay at the penthouse tonight and tomorrow. But know that this place exists, that it's yours whether you choose me or not. And if I choose to leave, if I take this apartment and walk away from you completely, then I let you go. His jaw clenched. It'll destroy me. But I let you go. You said you'd never let me go, that you'd burn down anyone who tried to take me from you. I lied. He looked at her and his eyes were wet. Or maybe I just didn't understand yet that keeping you prisoner would kill whatever chance I had at you actually loving me back. The vulnerability in his voice made Seraphina's chest tight. This man, this dangerous, ruthless man who'd manipulated her into marriage, was offering her freedom, actual freedom, and it terrified her more than being trapped ever had. I need time, she said finally. Take all the time you need. Lucien stood. The keys are on the kitchen counter. The building is secure. You'll be safe here. They drove back to the penthouse in silence. Seraphina's mind was spinning, trying to reconcile the man who'd trapped her with the man who'd built her an escape route, trying to figure out which version was real and which was another manipulation. When they reached the penthouse, Lucien's phone rang. He answered it, listened for 10 seconds, and his entire body went rigid. When? A pause. How many agents? Another pause. Understood. I'm on my way. He ended the call and looked at Seraphina with an expression that made her stomach drop. They're executing warrants tonight, multiple properties. They're moving faster than I anticipated. He grabbed his suit jacket from the closet. I have to go. Coordinate with my lawyers. Make sure nothing catastrophic happens. What do you need me to do? Stay here. Don't answer the door for anyone except Marcus. Don't talk to anyone about anything. He paused in front of her. And if the FBI shows up here, if they try to question you, you tell them nothing. Invoke spousal privilege. Call my lawyers immediately. Lucienne. He kissed her, hard and desperate, and like it might be the last time. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark and fierce. Whatever happens tonight, whatever you hear about me, whatever they say I've done, remember that I gave you a choice. Remember that I built you that apartment. Remember that I'm trying, failing probably, but trying, to be something other than the monster everyone thinks I am. Then he was gone, the elevator taking him down to whatever crisis was erupting across his criminal empire. Seraphina stood alone in the penthouse and tried to breathe through the panic rising in her chest. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Lucien's properties are being raided as we speak. This is your last chance to cooperate. Meet me at the apartment he just showed you. 1 hour. Come alone. HC. Harrison Cross. Still pushing, still trying to use her as a weapon against Lucian. Another text. If you don't show, I'll assume you're complicit in his crimes. I'll have no choice but to include you in the investigation. Seraphina stared at the messages, her hands shaking. Cross was threatening her, trying to force her hand by making her choose between betraying Lucian and being investigated herself. A third text. Julian's here with me. Says he has information about Lucian's connection to his firm. Says you knew about it all along. Better come explain yourself before this gets ugly. Julian. Her ex-fiancé, who'd humiliated her at the gallery, was now working with Cross to destroy Lucian. Working with Cross to destroy her by association. The room spun. Seraphina grabbed her phone and called the only person she could think of. Maya answered on the first ring. Sarah? Oh my God, I've been so worried. I need help. The words tumbled out. I need you to come to this address right now. Don't ask questions. Just come. She texted Maya the address of the apartment, her apartment that Lucian had built. Then she grabbed her coat and headed for the elevator. Marcus appeared from wherever he'd been lurking. Mrs. Devereaux. Mr. Devereaux said you should stay here. I'm leaving. You can either drive me or I'm calling an Uber. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he followed her to the parking garage. The drive to the apartment felt like moving through quicksand. Every block closer increased the pressure in Seraphina's chest until she could barely breathe. When they pulled up, Harrison Cross was waiting outside the building. Julian stood beside him, wearing a smug expression that made Seraphina want to put her fist through his face. She got out of the SUV before Marcus could object. Mrs. Devereaux? Cross's smile was sharp. Thank you for coming. What do you want? Just to talk. Inside. Privately. His eyes flicked to Marcus. Your bodyguard can wait out here. Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of him. Can I? Cross pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. Lucian meeting with men she didn't recognize in what looked like a warehouse. Can I tell you in front of your husband's employee that we have evidence of him facilitating the sale of illegal weapons to known terrorists? The word terrorists hit like a gunshot. Seraphina's vision blurred. You're lying. I wish I was. Cross pocketed his phone. Your husband isn't just operating in gray areas, Mrs. Devereaux. He's actively funding groups that kill innocent people. And if you don't help us stop him, you're complicit. She's not complicit in anything. Maya's voice came from behind them. She must have driven like a demon to get here this fast. She moved to Seraphina's side, glaring at Cross. And she's not talking to you without a lawyer. Your friend should reconsider. Julian stepped forward, and Seraphina felt 3 years of hurt crystallize into rage. I have documents proving Seraphina knew about Lucien's illegal activities, emails, text messages, evidence that she was actively helping him launder money through charitable foundations. That's insane, Seraphina started, but Julian cut her off. Is it? You volunteer at a hospital that received $1 million donation from one of Lucian's shell companies. You personally processed the paperwork. You signed documents accepting the funds. That makes you an accessory. I didn't know. Ignorance isn't a defense. Cross moved closer. But cooperation is. Help us, and we'll make sure you're protected. Refuse, and you go down with your husband. Seraphina's phone rang, Lucian's name on the screen. She answered with shaking hands. Don't listen to them. His voice was rough, urgent. Whatever Cross is saying, whatever evidence Julian claims to have, it's manufactured, designed to make you panic and make bad choices. He says you're funding terrorists. I'm not. That's a lie designed to make you betray me. A pause. Seraphina, I need you to trust me. I know I haven't earned that trust. I know I've done terrible things, but I have never funded terrorism. That's a line I would never cross. How do I know you're telling the truth? You don't. You just have to choose who you believe more. Me or the prosecutor who's been manipulating you since the moment he learned about our marriage? Cross was watching her face, trying to read her decision. Julian looked smug, certain she'd break. Maya looked terrified but steady, staying close like an anchor. Seraphina. Lucian's voice dropped lower. I love you. I know that doesn't fix what I've done. I know it doesn't make me less of a monster, but I love you, and I'm asking you to trust me one more time. She looked at Cross, at Julian, at Maya, then at Marcus, who'd moved closer, his hand inside his jacket where he probably kept a weapon. I'm not helping you, she said to Cross. I'm not testifying. I'm not giving you anything. Then you're under arrest. Cross pulled out handcuffs. Seraphina Devereaux, you're being charged as an accessory to... She's not going anywhere. Marcus's voice was ice. His weapon was out now, pointed at Cross with steady hands. Step away from Mrs. Devereaux. Now. Are you threatening a federal officer? I'm protecting my employer's wife from harassment. Marcus didn't lower the gun. Leave, before this situation escalates beyond anyone's control. Julian's smugness had evaporated. Cross looked furious but also uncertain. Maya had grabbed Seraphina's arm and was pulling her toward the building entrance. This isn't over, Cross said. I'll have warrants for both of you by morning. Then serve them in the morning. Marcus gestured with the gun. Leave. Cross and Julian retreated to their car. Marcus kept his weapon out until they drove away, then finally lowered it. Inside, he said to Seraphina. Now, before they come back with actual backup. Seraphina let Maya and Marcus guide her into the building, up the stairs, into the apartment that was supposed to be her sanctuary. Instead, it felt like another trap. Her phone rang again. Lucian. Are you safe? First words out of his mouth. For now. Marcus said he had to pull a weapon on Cross. Cross tried to arrest me. On what grounds? Accessory charges. He says I helped you launder money through hospital donations. Lucian was quiet for so long Seraphina thought the call had dropped. Then, that money was clean, completely legitimate. From legal accounts with proper documentation, Cross is reaching, trying to intimidate you into cooperation. It's working. I know, which is why I'm coming to you. Stay in that apartment, lock the door. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Lucien, if the FBI is watching, I don't care. You're my wife, and you're in danger, and I'm coming to you. He ended the call before she could argue. Maya was pacing the apartment, taking in Seraphina's things, the obvious care that had gone into every detail. Please tell me you're not actually in love with him. I don't know what I am. Seraphina sank onto the couch. I'm terrified and confused, and I don't know who to trust. Trust me. Maya sat beside her. Trust that I have no agenda except keeping you safe. And my professional opinion? You need to get away from all of this. Lucian, Cross, Julian, all of them. You need to disappear before you get caught in crossfire that will destroy you. Where would I even go? I don't know. Anywhere. We'll figure it out together. Maya grabbed her hands. Please, Sarah, let me help you actually escape this time. Before Seraphina could respond, the apartment door opened. Lucien walked in looking like violence barely contained, his eyes sweeping the space until they landed on Seraphina. You're okay. Not a question. A confirmation. For now. He moved toward her, but Maya stood up, blocking his path. Stay away from her. With respect, Ms. Chen, this is between my wife and myself. She's not your wife. She's a woman you trapped into a fraudulent marriage. The marriage is legal, the circumstances were unconventional, but she's my wife in every way that matters. Lucien's voice was steel. Now move or I'll move you. Try it? Maya's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. Try to touch her and see what happens. Maya, Seraphina started, but her friend cut her off. No. I'm done watching you get manipulated by men who see you as something to own. Julian did it. Now he's doing it. She glared at Lucien. You want her? Earn her. Actually earn her instead of buying her or trapping her or building her fancy apartments and calling it love. Lucien looked at Seraphina over Maya's shoulder. Tell her to move. No. The word surprised even Seraphina. She's right. About all of it. You've manipulated me from the beginning, and now I'm about to be arrested because you've tangled my life up in your criminal empire. So no, I'm not telling her to move. I'm telling you to leave. Something cracked in Lucian's expression. You don't mean that. I do. Seraphina stood, moving to stand beside Maya. I need time to think. Time away from you. Time to figure out what's real and what's manipulation. Everything about how I feel about you is real. Then prove it by leaving. Lucien looked like she'd shot him. For a long moment, he just stood there, and Seraphina could see him fighting every instinct he had to just take what he wanted. Then he turned and walked toward the door. He stopped in the doorway, looking back at her one last time. I meant what I said. This apartment is yours. The keys, the freedom, all of it, whether you choose me or not. I know. And Seraphina? His voice was rough. I love you. That's not manipulation, that's just truth. Inconvenient, unwanted maybe, but truth. Then he was gone, and Seraphina was left standing in an apartment built by a man who claimed to love her while simultaneously destroying her life. Maya pulled her into a hug. You did the right thing. Then why does it feel like I'm drowning? Because you're in too deep with all of them. But we're going to fix this, together. Seraphina's phone buzzed. Another text from Cross. Smart choice sending Lucian away. Now let's talk about how you can actually help yourself. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Federal Building. Don't be late. She showed Maya the text. You're not going, Maya said firmly. If I don't, he'll issue a warrant. Then let him. We'll get you a real lawyer, someone who's not connected to Lucian, someone who actually has your interests at heart. Seraphina nodded, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Outside, night was falling on Chicago, and somewhere in the city, Lucien was probably watching his empire collapse while federal agents tore through his properties looking for evidence. Somewhere, Cross was building a case that would destroy them both. Somewhere, Julian was probably celebrating, thinking he'd finally gotten revenge for whatever imagined slight Seraphina had committed by existing in his orbit. And here she was, standing in an apartment built by obsession and desperation, trying to decide if survival meant betraying the man who claimed to love her or protecting the man who'd trapped her. Maya made tea. They didn't drink. Tried to make conversation that went nowhere. Eventually just sat beside Seraphina on the couch, holding her hand while they both stared at walls that contained evidence of Lucien's careful cataloging of her life. Around midnight, Seraphina's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Mrs. Devereaux? The voice was unfamiliar. Male. Calm. My name is Agent Rivera. I'm with the FBI. We have your husband in custody. He's asking for you, says he won't cooperate until he speaks with you directly. The world tilted. You arrested him? 2 hours ago. Multiple charges including weapons trafficking and money laundering. He's refused to say anything except that he needs to speak with his wife. A pause. Will you come down to the federal building? Tonight? Seraphina looked at Maya, who was shaking her head violently. I can't. He says it's urgent, says there's information you need to hear before we proceed with questioning. Rivera's voice was professional, but not unkind. You'd be doing him a favor. Maybe yourself too. Don't go, Maya whispered. It's a trap. But Seraphina was already standing, already grabbing her coat, already making the choice that would determine everything that came next. I'll be there in 30 minutes. She ended the call and looked at Maya. I have to go. You don't have to do anything. He's in custody. He's asking for me. I have to. Why? Why do you have to run to him every time he calls? Seraphina didn't have an answer that would make sense to anyone except maybe herself, because despite everything, despite the manipulation and the lies and the traps, Lucien had built her an escape route. Because he'd let Margaret go instead of destroying her. Because he'd shown her his sister's grave and the apartment where he grew up and every ugly truth about where he came from. Because somewhere beneath all the darkness, she'd seen something that looked almost human. Because maybe she was just as broken as he was, and broken things recognized each other. I'll come with you, Maya said finally. No, this I have to do alone. Sarah, please. Seraphina grabbed her friend's hands. Trust me, just this once. Let me do this alone. Maya's eyes were wet, but she nodded. Seraphina called an Uber because Marcus had disappeared, probably called back to manage whatever crisis was consuming Lucien's organization. The drive to the federal building felt endless and too fast all at once. When she arrived, Agent Rivera was waiting in the lobby. He was younger than she expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes that didn't match the weapon on his hip. "Thank you for coming." He gestured toward the elevators. "He's upstairs. Interview room 3. They rode up in silence. Rivera led her down a hallway lined with identical doors, stopped in front of one, and knocked twice before opening it. Lucien sat at a metal table in a room that screamed institutional bleakness. His hands cuffed in front of him, his suit rumpled for maybe the first time since Seraphina had known him. He looked up when she entered, and the relief that flooded his expression made her chest tight. "You came." His voice was rough. "You asked." Rivera gestured to the chair across from Lucien. "I'll give you 15 minutes. There's a camera but no audio. Whatever you say is between you two." He left, closing the door behind him. Seraphina sat down slowly, not trusting her legs. "What did you need to tell me?" "I'm going to prison." No preamble, no softening it. "They have enough evidence to convict me on at least half the charges. I'll be lucky if I get less than 20 years. The words hit like fists. "Lucien Sousin." "Let me finish." He leaned forward as much as the cuffs would allow. "I need you to understand something. Everything I did, every manipulation, every lie, every terrible choice, I did it knowing this moment would probably come. I've been operating on borrowed time for years, and I was fine with that, fine with the idea that eventually I'd pay for my choices. Then why? Because I met you. And for the first time in my life, I wanted more time. Wanted a future that didn't end in a cell or a grave." His eyes were fierce. "So I trapped you into marrying me because I'm selfish and desperate, and I wanted something good before it all fell apart." Seraphina's tears were falling now, hot and unstoppable. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to leave Chicago, tonight. Take the apartment or don't. Take the money I set aside in your name or burn it. Just get out before this consumes you too. They think I'm an accessory. You're not. My lawyers will make sure of that. But you need to disappear while they sort it out. Go somewhere Cross can't find you, somewhere Julian can't use you as a pawn." He smiled, bitter and broken. "Somewhere you can actually be free." "I don't want to run. You don't have a choice. Not if you want to survive this." "And what about you?" "I'll survive. I always do." His voice dropped. "But I need to know you're safe. Need to know that whatever happens to me, you're out there somewhere living the life you deserve." Seraphina reached across the table and took his cuffed hands in hers. "I never got to choose you. Not really. You trapped me before I had the chance." "I know. I'm sorry. But if I had the choice now, if you'd approached me honestly, told me about Emma, showed me who you really were." She stopped, throat tight. "I think I would have chosen you anyway." Lucien's breath caught. "Don't say that unless you mean it." "I mean it." The truth of it settled in her chest. "You're a monster. You're manipulative and ruthless, and you've done terrible things, but you're also the only person who's seen me as something other than inadequate or disposable. You built me an escape route even though it meant losing me. That's not nothing." "It's not enough to make up for everything else." "No, but it's a start." She squeezed his hands. "What if I don't run? What if I stay and fight this with you?" "Then you destroy yourself. Cross will use you to get to me. He'll twist everything until you're either in prison or witness protection. Either way, you lose. Or we both fight, together, married for real this time instead of on paper." Lucien stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "You're serious. Terrifyingly serious." Seraphina stood, still holding his hands. "You said you wanted me to choose you, so I'm choosing you. Not because I'm trapped, not because I don't have options, but because despite every reason I shouldn't, I love you too." The words hung between them, raw and impossible, and more true than anything Seraphina had ever said. "You can't love me," Lucien whispered. "I'm about to spend the next 20 years in prison. Then I'll wait." "That's insane. So is everything else about us." She leaned across the table and kissed him, gentle and fierce and full of every complicated emotion she couldn't name. "I'm staying. I'm fighting, and when you get out, we're doing this marriage thing properly, with actual choice and actual trust and actual love. They'll destroy you. Let them try. The door opened. Rivera stood in the threshold. Time's up, Mrs. Devereaux. Seraphina pulled back, her eyes locked on Lucien's. I'm not running. Whatever comes next, we face it together. You're going to regret this, Lucien said, but his voice was thick with emotion. Probably. She smiled through her tears. But I'm done running from things that scare me, including you. She left him sitting in that interview room, walked out of the federal building into Chicago's cold night, and called Maya. I need a lawyer, she said when her friend answered. The best defense attorney you know. Someone who can fight the FBI and actually win. What are you doing? Something stupid and brave and probably catastrophic. Seraphina's voice was steady. I'm choosing him. Actually choosing him. And I need help making sure that choice doesn't destroy me completely. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then, you're absolutely sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Then I'm helping you, even though I think you've lost your mind. I probably have. Yeah. Maya's voice softened. But I've never heard you sound this certain about anything in 3 years. So if this is what you need, I'm with you. Seraphina stood on the sidewalk watching the city move around her. People living normal lives with normal problems that didn't include criminal husbands and federal investigations, and marriages born from manipulation that somehow turned into something real. Tomorrow, Cross would come for her. Tomorrow, the FBI would try to make her testify. Tomorrow, Julian would probably try to use her as revenge for imagined slights. But tonight, she'd made a choice.